Welcome into the Locked On NBA Draft Live, presented by Bird Dogs. We are here. I'm Nick Angstadt, host of Locked On NBA and Locked On Mavericks. I'm here with Leif Thulin from Locked On NBA Big Board, who's got you covered with all kinds of stuff. We are going to be covering all of the draft picks through the first round. We'll cover all the trades that happened, including Chris Paul going to the Warriors. That one is still like wrinkling my brain. Just an incredible night ahead of us. I just was at the Mavericks facility. Nico Harrison was talking about how because of the new CBA, because of the new rules coming for next season, that the calls and trade talks and everything that he's had, conversations he's had, has increased tenfold. He said 10x more calls this year than last year in the draft. Maybe that's because the Mavericks have the 10th pick. Maybe it's because we're going to see a lot of action tonight. Leif, welcome into the Locked On NBA Draft Live. Who's a player you're looking at right now, as I'm really curious to see where this player is going to go early in the draft?
Well, I really think the draft starts with the 4th and 5th picks, really, because in some variety, it's going to be Wembanyama, Scoot, and Brandon Miller. It sounds like it's going to be Wembanyama, Brandon Miller, Scoot, and then it looks like it's going to be Amen Thompson. So I think 5th pick with the Pistons, is it going to be Ausar? Is it going to be Jarace Walker? Is it going to be Cam Whitmore, despite all the smoke of him doing poorly in workouts? So I'm really curious about the 5th pick, and then I think dominoes from there are going to fall. Like, I'm a Jazz fan. You're obviously with the Mavericks. I think our picks are very much impacted by that 5th pick.
There's a lot of, it seems like the draft, some people say the draft starts at 5. Do we even know who's going to go at 2 at this point is kind of my question, because you look at the last couple of days, there's been smoke screens.
Does anyone smell anything smoky?
There's been smoke screens for the Hornets taking, all right, well, we're on Brandon Miller. And then this morning, there was a rumor that he was, that they were looking at Scoot Henderson. It's just a interesting situation with the Hornets. By the way, we will have Locked On NBA hosts joining us from all across the country. We've got one right here in New Orleans. Jake Madison, Locked On Pelicans, welcome in to the show. What are you thinking? What are you hoping that the Pelicans do tonight?
I got no idea just yet. I think it's almost 50-50 if they could trade Zion Williamson tonight, depending on what happens with Charlotte in the 2nd overall pick. It's going to come down to, if Brandon Miller's number 2, that door is wide open. They like Scoot Henderson, and we've heard a lot of smoke and rumors about this the past week.
So is your thought that if they take, let's say that the Hornets take Scoot Henderson, then the Pelicans would not think to trade Zion? They're not interested in Brandon Miller like that.
No, this is not like open season in New Orleans. This is not them shopping Zion Williamson, not them shopping Brandon Ingram. This is about Scoot Henderson. It's not about the 2nd pick. It's not about the 3rd pick. It's about Scoot.
That's their guy. That's who they've been after this whole time.
I mean, if you think about it, like, listen to what he has said and what's been said about him in the past couple of days, even, right? About his mentality. This guy, it sounds like he knows as much about kinesiology as most doctors do, with how the different muscle groups and things like that work together. It's kind of the opposite of Zion Williamson, isn't? So if you're going to move on from Zion and kind of the off-court stuff and questions about maturity, work ethic, desire, all of those things, you're going to go for a guy that has all of that. And it sounds like that is a big plus and a big quality for Scoot Henderson.
Why are they so infatuated with Scoot Henderson, Leif? What would he bring to the Pelicans right now? What have you seen from him in the scouting that you've done? What have you seen from Scoot Henderson that the Pelicans are so enamored with him right now that they would even consider trading Zion?
Well, put quite frankly, Scoot he's a guy who has the capacity to be a transcendent star. And that doesn't come around every single draft. Obviously, he's not going number 1 with this draft, but that's just because of who's there. He's a guy that I think is more similar to Derrick Rose than any prospect that's come since Derrick Rose. Like, De'Aaron Fox is exceptionally fast, but Scoot's crazy fast and has this power and burst behind him that Rose did. So as for the Pelicans, you've already got guys that can score. You've got 3-and-D wings and Herb Jones and Trey Murphy that are absolute commodities. Scoot Henderson's able to put pressure on the rim similarly to Zion Williamson. Not at the same power, because Zion's unbelievable at getting to the rim and finishing there, but he's able to do that and be a point guard and potentially not have the same injury woes that Zion's had and some of the other troubles with a fit, being a co-star. I think that's a wonderful fit. And if I'm Scoot Henderson, like he seems to be, I'd be rooting for the opportunity to go to the Pelicans.
Jake, what's the thought on Zion's medicals? This is probably a big problem with this, or like a big sticking point, I would think, for the Blazers if they do end up in this spot. Like, what are the thoughts behind that? Would it take a while? Like, is that something that?
No, I don't think that's as big of a deal as you're thinking, and in fact, I'd be willing to bet they kind of already know and maybe have seen some of that stuff. And I think the big question around Zion is not that. When you look at the injuries, right, like they're not connected injuries necessarily. He had the torn meniscus his rookie year. He was relatively healthy his sophomore year. He had the foot injury last year, and then this year was a hamstring injury. These are not things that are always connected. And I do think the hamstring injury this past year was actually just kind of fluky in general. I think the big hang up for them is, the level of maturity, the work ethic. There just always seems to be something, right? He's been in the news for all the wrong reasons the past week. And while I don't think you should not take him because of what he does as a consenting adult, let's say, I do wonder if Damian Lillard views that as someone that he wants to commit his future to. And I don't think we should discount the say that Lillard has in something like this. If he looks at Zion and is like, this guy's not going to work as hard as I am, he's going to say either trade me from Portland or go and get someone else, or we'll figure it out later. And he's going to shoot this idea down very quickly. And we've also heard a report that they went after Bridges with the Nets, and the Nets turned that down. So they're trying to do something, and I think it really comes down to what your view of Zion is and what your value is with him. Is Scoot Henderson more valuable than Zion Williamson? I think Pelicans fans view Zion as someone who should get a superstar return, but given he's only played 29 games the past 2 seasons, the always stuff around him, right? Maybe the Portland Trailblazers view the second overall pick, and so they want New Orleans to put more into a deal, and that's where things kind of break down and fall apart, and I do think things have been kind of quiet the past 24 hours between these two teams. But, there's a lot of smoke to this, and I think it really just comes down to, do you trust Zion to kind of put it all together? If you do, you take the risk. If you can get enough other stuff from the Pelicans, you maybe take that risk to kind of move you above that kind of tipping point. But if you don't, you probably walk away from a deal like this.
Shams Charania just reported the Pelicans received a meeting in recent days with Scoot Henderson. New Orleans has pursued the top 2 to 3 pick in this draft, but both Charlotte and Portland are so far expressing no interest in moving the pick. Leaf, is that the right move for those teams, for Charlotte and Portland, to be like, hey, we'll just take Brandon Miller, we'll just take Scoot Henderson where we are?
That's a difficult one, just because if you get Zion who's right, it's that's a big time star. I personally think Scoot Henderson I would be more comfortable betting with to be a franchise altering star than Brandon Miller. So I am okay with that notion of, let's bet on this guy with a clean slate. But Brandon Miller, I don't see having that same top end return that Zion Williamson could or Scoot Henderson could, in my estimation. So I think it's at least worth exploring from that perspective. But I respect the organization's belief in their development. It's ballsy, but I respect it.
Do you agree with that, Jake? That is a ballsy take on it.
I'm kind of just reacting to the Shams tweet right there, and honestly kind of missed everything that was just said. I'll be perfectly honest here. I guess this is the dangers of doing things like this.
What are your thoughts what are your thoughts on the meeting with Scoot Henderson that the Pelicans got?
I mean, look, this lines up with what we know. Like, it's not like big breaking news there. I think the fact that I should
put away my sound.
No. I think it's important because, look, these guys don't work out for anyone outside of the top 3 teams, right? They cancel meetings all the time if they think they're not going to go to that pick because it can only hurt their draft stock. So if Scoot Henderson is taking that meeting, he has belief that the Pelicans legitimately might trade up to get him. I think that's kind of the implication here. And thus the implication from that, because you're not getting a deal done without one of Zion or Brandon Ingram involved in that, is that these guys are at least involved in discussions. You're going to hear, and I'm going to get so annoyed with this on like Monday, that you're going to hear stuff of official trade offer, and they never officially put Zion in a deal, or they never, Zion was never on the table. It's such garbage, right? And it's just semantics and spin on that sort of thing, because if you know a deal won't get done with your additional draft picks and you're still having discussions, it means that you're talking about Zion or Brandon Ingram, and so they're involved in the deals in some capacity here. So it just kind of says, like, it lines up with everything that we already know.
This whole thing is so interesting to me. It's a big game of chicken. It's a big game of chicken, honestly, with Damian Lillard as one of the main features, like in the middle of this. Will he ask for a trade out? If he does, then I don't think a Portland would go after a Zion Williamson. They just take who they have at 3, and then just be happy with it and start their rebuild there. Lots of stuff on the Pelicans. You'll have a live show right after your pick. Great stuff from Jake Madison. Let's talk about, we're going live on a couple of streams here. If you're joining us, appreciate you. If you're joining us on Locked On NBA, you know that Jake Madison and I host Locked On NBA at different times, but still host it. Leif Thulin is one of the contributors of Locked On NBA Big Board, so shout out if you're joining us from that feed. If you're joining us from Locked On Lakers and the Kamenetsky brothers, they'll be joining us at some point during this, and so we'll talk about what the Lakers want to do. Locked On Jazz, Leif Thulin is like the unofficial David's on vacation host of Locked On Jazz, so we'll talk about what the Jazz are looking to do, but let's talk about the Mavericks, because that's the show that I host. And I know that there are a lot of people, I'm looking at the chat right now, there are a lot of people yelling at each other saying this is ridiculous, what you think about what the Mavericks are going to do tonight. Leif, if you're the Mavericks, what do you do at 10? Who are you looking at player-wise, or do you think that their whole thing about they should trade down, get a talent right now, and then take somebody a little bit later in the draft? What are your thoughts on that, knowing the entire board like you do?
I would take Dereck Lively. I really would.
Just straight up.
I mean, maybe you could trade down 4 or 5 spots and get him still, because few of those teams, like if you look at the teams drafting 11 through 15, let's just say for the sake of argument that my Utah Jazz would trade up to 10, you get 16 and 28, and we take an expiring contract, something like that. Then those teams that are in that break, the only one that's a real threat to take Lively would be the Thunder. So you're playing a little bit of a scary game. But you would get multiple picks. You have another chance. But I would alleviate that risk altogether and take the guy who fits what you need. Like, you have the transcendent star. It's not like you're trying to draft someone to be your franchise-changing player. You have Luka Doncic. So I would take someone who complements him perfectly, and like a baby Tyson Chandler. Like you're getting a rim protecting, rim running guy who will grow as a player and physically, who has shown the capacity to stretch the floor, which I don't even think is important at all, but that's the biggest knock on him. It's like, oh, what is he going to do? Well, he's going to set screens for Luka and catch lobs and block shots. Like, that's what you need. I would consider Hendricks, but it's just, I'd rather go with Lively. I think he makes more sense.
Lively averaged 5 points, 5 rebounds. He averaged only 20 minutes a game. Why did he have such little production? He did block 2.5 shots a game, but why did he have such little production in college? That's the thing that keeps coming up over and over again when I bring up Lively on Locked On Mavs. There's a Mavs media member that I just saw said he's Moses Brown when talking about Dereck Lively. Like, debunk that. Tell me why why he had such limited production at Duke and all that.
Well, I think it starts with the fact that he was injured to start the year, so he had a slow start. And then as he got better and he physically healed and his game got better, he kind of just took the role that he was given when he was recovering and accepted it. But then when Duke made a run, and I don't have the exact stats in front of me right now, but Duke by the end of the year, the last 15 games of the season, was top 10 in KenPom offensively and defensively. And typically that means you're a Final Four caliber team. And the reason that was the case was because Dereck Lively was anchoring the offense and starting a lot of the rotations that they were able to run. They were able to run pick and roll far more effectively because he was front and center. And the other reason for his limited counting stats as opposed to impact of watching him is just because they had a lot of players. Like you had Kyle Filipowski's not in this draft, and he was their leading scorer. You had Tyrese Proctor, who I thought was their best player, not in this draft. And then you've got Dariq Whitehead. You've got other players that make large impacts on the game, and he just played a role.
It's interesting. I think that he fits such a need that they need, and it's really hard to get a top 10 center in some way, somehow, and he could be that. I don't think he would be at day one, but I think he could become that, and it's just hard to get that kind of value. Jake, you and I have talked about a Mavs move down to 14, potentially get Lively there, get Jonas Valanciunas with the Mavericks. Is that something the Pelicans would look at doing?
Potentially, I think he makes a lot of sense for most teams, right? It's a big man that can give you rim protection and also defend on the perimeter, and that's something that Jonas Valanciunas wasn't capable of doing last year. The defending on the perimeter part, and that's why they didn't close fourth quarters with him. I'll tell you this, FanDuel had really good odds, I thought, on Dereck Lively going in the top 10, so I jumped all over that. So I don't think he gets past Dallas. I think he's going to go in the top 10. That's kind of my guess. Also, the odds being really good there really enticed me on that. So thank you, FanDuel, for that here. Yeah, he was official sports betting partner of Locked On, by the way.
Yeah, not of this stream, but of Locked On for sure. He's he was plus 250 yesterday, and now he's minus 105.
It's like one of those guys that's like
not just to Mavericks, but
right, just in the top 10. I'm curious if he's going to end up going there. Kobe Bufkin seems like the other guy that's kind of rising in that sense too. At least is kind of how I'm reading things. So, there's not another like other than Wemby, right? And we're not really talking about him here because that doesn't make sense. But like, there's not another kind of center like him in this. In the top 20.
James Nagy is like the next guy, and he's like,
I think Lively's going to have a lot of suitors for what he brings as a modern, like low usage center. Sounds great to me on most teams.
I would make the argument that Clowney could be a center. I think as the next
fair.
one taken, but I agree with your general point.
Yeah, the kid from Alabama, that he could take a little while too, but Richard Stevens would really try and talk me into Clowney the last couple of days as a Mavs potential target.
I might have started Richard on Clowney. I've had Clowney so pretty high. When we were at the lottery, we talked about Clowney and Leonard Miller as some guys that could sneak into the lottery.
That's what I think
or like just past the lottery, like the 16-ish, 18 range.
To me, I think the Mavericks are looking at trading down. Like I said, I was at the Mavericks facility just a little while ago, honestly, like 30 minutes ago. And Nico Harrison was talking about just the sheer number of trade talks that have been happening. He said it's 10 times more than it was last year. And he thinks he credited it to the new CBA coming and all the restraints and everything like that. And so there's going to be a lot of talks. I think it's also because they have the 10th pick now, but maybe that's something a little different than last year. But I think what the Mavericks need to do is they need to trade down. They got to get something with this asset that can help them right now, and like they got to walk and chew gum at the same time. Get something that can help you now. Clint Capella, even the John Collins trade that was rumored earlier, a Jonas Valanciunas. Somebody like that, and then also get a young player. Nico also mentioned, I asked him about Jaden Hardy and Josh Green because I wanted to know what's his thought process on looking at two young players like that through this whole next thing. I kind of wanted to know if he was thinking about trading them or not. Like, hey, what do you think about these two players? And he said, we love that we got the 10th pick because of guys like Josh Green and Jaden Hardy, that they are guys that we've developed and looked at. And so I think he really values getting somebody in this draft. So I can't imagine them trading out of this, but we'll see.
You mentioned trading down, and I'm curious, what like the general consensus on the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast is, and kind of some of the tiers of players here. And I do my like amateur draft analysis here on guys, but I think you have good value from like 10 to 20. So any of those teams, 10, 11, 12, maybe trading back a couple of spots, you might get a guy that kind of grades out similar on your board. Is that something you think is an optimal strategy in a draft like this?
Yes and no. I mean, you could spin it for different teams different ways, because I'm trying to think of a way.
How would you tier this off then?
Yeah, start there.
I think there's a pretty clear top 9, right? Like at the Anthony Black, Taylor Hendricks, Cam Whitmore spot, it kind of breaks to Dereck Lively, and then below that, where do you think that next tier is after those top 9?
Well, I think that the guys that will go around there are Kobe Bufkin, Bilal Coulibaly. Cason Wallace seems to be trending downward, but he's often kind of put there on big boards. I myself have him around there. I think it really depends on the Wizards are, to me, now a mystery. These deals have changed a lot there. So at 8, now Anthony Black was the favorite. Now he's the betting favorite to become the Magic's pick at 6. So if Anthony Black and Ausar Thompson go at 5 and 6 respectively in whatever order, now there's a lot of wings. And so I think the board shuffles a little bit. So yes, in terms of like a big board, I think that's probably accurate that there's a delineation between 9 and 10. But I also think that Hendricks probably falls if those guards go higher, meaning that Jarace Walker or Cam Whitmore fall. And so that's why I would say that the board probably is going to be different when the draft happens than what like typical boards delineation of 1 through 9 is. I wouldn't be surprised if Coulibaly and Bufkin leapfrog Hendricks just because of positional fits. And I wouldn't even say needs, just like preferences for different teams, because the Wizards are a mystery to me. Do they take Whitmore? That's kind of where I'm leaning personally. I think that's what's going to happen. If Walker starts to slip because Thompson and Black go 5 and 6, now Hendricks' main fit that he's been tied to, Indiana, doesn't happen. 8, I can't imagine the Wizards take him to be their star to be the guy who's supposed to have the pressure of the franchise. I don't think the Jazz would take Hendricks. 10, the Mavericks could, but I'd imagine they take Lively. 11, that makes sense at 11, and 12 would be an absolutely beautiful fit at the Thunder. So to me, I think 8 really changes the draft, especially if 5 and 6 go guard.
Yeah. I could easily see the Mavs taking Hendricks over Dereck Lively, by the way. I know Lively is now the pick that everyone's talked themselves into, but I could see them looking at Hendricks and saying, all right, well, this is the guy that we know that, all right, we need a big wing too. Like, they have multiple needs. The number one need is a center, like a starting center. Their second one is a big wing, and he's one that would fit so well in what they want to do. Joining us,
I would like that one.
Just got back into the first round on a trade that happened last night 2 different times. John Corrales, Locked On Celtics, welcome in at the facility here. What are your thoughts on the Celtics trade? Just how are you feeling about Porzingis? Have you seen him? Has he been around?
I'm not.
He was gonna spill the beans, and then all of a sudden the Celtics came over like the ghost of Red Auerbach. Just like took.
I'm glad
took him
they
out of
actually
the
did
stream.
something. He wasn't sure where he was going to be yesterday. I probably shouldn't say that on here, but
oh man, yeah, he was wondering, and now they're back into the first round with the pick 25. We'll see if we can get John back. I don't know where he went, but yeah, let's talk about that trade a little bit. What are your thoughts on the Celtics getting Porzingis? They're now back into the 25th pick. Leif, who are you looking at for the Pelicans with the 25th pick now?
I think the 25th pick is a position where teams will look for veteran wings if they have the intention to compete, as opposed to like long-term potential guys. So maybe Kobe Brown, Chris Murray.
John, any idea where they go at 25? What's your reaction now being back in the first round?
I mean, my reaction to being back in the first round is that I don't think this is a pick that's going to help Boston as far as on the floor. I think this is going to be a pick that is more likely to help them as a trade asset. So I am surprised. Well, I shouldn't say I'm surprised, because I think it was just part of the price. You get Marcus Smart. You get 2 picks for Marcus Smart. You take him. I think the Celtics are probably looking to make another move. I wouldn't be surprised if there's something announced in the near future. I'm not sure how they're going to approach Malcolm Brogdon, if they're going to try to move him as well and get, maybe get a different guard in here. But I'd be surprised if the Celtics draft somebody at 25 to keep and develop and be part of this team moving forward.
Leif, who are any guys that could be around that 25 spot that could fit what John just said?
The guys that I would say have a lot of potential would be more trade package ones. Maybe Rayon Rupert. He's French. He's played for the New Zealand Breakers. Really raw, but tremendously athletic and could be valuable down the road. And then there's the guys that I think are more easily projectable in the short term. However, the Celtics have a plethora of wing defenders, and should they move them, could be conducive to success elsewhere, would be like the Chris Murrays, the Olivier-Maxence Prosper, some of those defensively oriented wings that I think have more upside as shooting and can play both ends of the NBA more quickly than some of the younger players at the tail end.
It's an interesting spot to be in. What are your thoughts, John, on having Porzingis now? Does that change the direction of what this team is looking at? Not even just in the draft, but in the future. Like, what's the next move that they need to do?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit surprised. It's kind of funny that Washington they fire their front office, they go a completely different direction, and all of a sudden a guy that we didn't think would be available is now part of the Celtics. Getting Porzingis does change things, because he's obviously a guy that scores differently. He is a bona fide third scorer, and they haven't had that kind of player in a long time, especially as a big. So it does change the direction a little bit, but I'm very curious to see how they handle the point guard position. If it's just simply going to be Derek White, you get the job. And if Brogdon sticks around, you remain the backup and you just move forward from that way. And, personally, I liked Marcus Smart a lot. And I think losing him gives, loses a bit of an edge that the Celtics needed. They have not been a particularly tough team. So losing your toughest player, I think, hurts. It puts a lot of pressure on Tatum and Brown to step up in that manner. It puts a lot of pressure on the guys who are coming back to find a way to win these tough games and make some of the plays that Marcus Smart was known for. So it's kind of interesting. This is the first time in a decade that Marcus Smart has not been on the Celtics team and will not be, they're in their backcourt. So it's going to be an interesting adjustment. My feeling right now is the Celtics are just definitely not done making moves. This is not how the Celtics are going to go into the season.
Yeah, no, I don't think it can be either because I don't know if you have enough guards at this point. Something I didn't mention on Locked On NBA last night, I wish I did. The dog meter going from Marcus Smart to Kristaps Porzingis is like you're losing a lot there. Is there any
You're going
way
from
that
pit bull to puppy?
Porzingis could step up? There was a moment in the playoffs where like Marcus Morris was going at him and Porzingis was the only one of the Mavericks that stepped up to like get in between, but he's not one to like fire a team up or to get them to, sit up straight in their seat or anything like that. Where does that come from now for the Celtics? Is it, have to come from Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum now that we've never seen?
Yeah, that's going to be the interesting question. This team, I have questioned their toughness, especially when you look at their playoff performances. They've continuously played series a game too long, and they end up relaxing a little too much. They don't have that chip on their shoulder, and Smart was basically their only guy that had that. And so it is going to fall on Tatum and Brown. Like those guys, there's a ton of pressure on those guys to be a little bit more of everything. They're going to have to be a little bit more distributors. They're going to have to be a little bit more emotional. They're going to have to be part of that. They can't lean on Marcus Smart to be that guy anymore, an emotional leader, characterized as the heart and soul of the team. So that's going to have to come from somewhere else. And hey, who knows? Maybe there's a guy in the draft that's willing to be that guy, that's willing to be the dog that they can get at 25 and just throw in there and just be crazy, right? To go in there and draw charges and just be a lunatic on the floor. But it's going to have to come from somewhere. And I don't know if the guys on this team are capable of doing that on a regular basis.
Leaf, throw out your big board. Who's number one and most dog in the draft right now? Like if you had to do a dog board, who has the most dog in them?
That's a great question. Let me at least peruse it so I can give you I think an underrated, like just absolute dog player would be Anthony Black, just because he's not available for the Celtics, just because he competes every possession on offense and defense with the ball in his hands, and then defensively he guards the guy with the ball and he plays full court. He's just got this tenacious energy, but he's kind of got an understated personality, which is like the antithesis of what Marcus Smart was. Let's see. I think Olivier-Maxence Prosper is pretty dogged. And one guy that I think is kind of getting underrated in this regard would be, I think Marcus Sasser's got a bit of a dog to him, the guard from Houston. I wouldn't be shocked if Boston goes for him. I don't know if that would like immediately help them, but I think he's got some dog to him. I just don't think he's necessarily a pure point guard, which would be the let down there. And then the last guy, this is a tough one just because he tore his Achilles, but Jalen Clark is an absolute dog defensively. He was the best defender in college basketball on the perimeter, in my opinion, and I don't think it was very close. But he tore his Achilles in like February, so he won't be able to play for quite a while. But really good defender. He's a competitor. I think he's got some say in that.
Let's move on to the Lakers. Andy Kamenetsky joining us now. We're also live on the Lakers stream. John Krause at the Celtics facility. We really appreciate.
I'm going to go.
We really appreciate hearing on the Celtics side of it. Andy, I just noticed your headline. Lakers getting Wemby? Question mark, question mark, question mark. That's a title that I think I've already seen an article about that already.
Look, man, if this league is every bit as rigged as all the people who hate the Lakers say it is, why are we not getting Wembanyama?
You just got to wait your turn, I guess, right? Like the Lakers eventually get their turn at all these guys.
He's not going to stay in San Antonio. That kid wants bigger, brighter lights. He's going to force his way to L.A. Wembanyama for D'Angelo Russell sign and trade. Who says no?
He's going to take one look at the river, the canal. What do they call it? What do they call it? Like,
actually, that river,
it's nice.
River walk. It actually is pretty cool.
No, it's a nice place, but I don't know if it's a nice place if you're a 7'4" like multi-millionaire that speaks multiple languages and like you said,
I think you can bring the party to you.
There's a comment just said that you're getting Wembanyama in 12 years. Your thoughts on that?
I'll probably still be doing a show about it.
Do you have any thoughts now about the Lakers with the 17th pick? Where do you think that they're going with it? What do you think they do with it?
I don't know. It's really interesting because there have been reports that the Lakers are extremely inclined to use the pick, like draft an actual young human being to add to their roster. There have been reports that the Lakers are, and these are more recent, really looking to trade at minimum down or possibly package 17 with Malik Beasley and Mo Bamba, maybe both of them, and bring in a more experienced veteran in a win now move. If nothing else, I would like them to try to split the difference a little bit. And if they trade 17, I would like them to get a pick back with whatever is coming their way, just because they could use the access to cost-controlled young talent. And as much as they're in the winnest of win now mode, the fact of the matter is LeBron's going to be 39. There's only so much longer you're going to be in this particular era of the Lakers. So you're in win now mode, but you shouldn't be completely, indifferent to the future. This isn't like you're all in with LeBron when he's 33.
I was with you until you suggested that LeBron would ever fall from grace at any point. You just even suggested and went there.
He's going to be playing with Bryce and Bronny.
And Zuri, what's the youngest kid?
Sure, why not?
So you think that you'll want them to get some kind of future pick? Leaf, who's your best player at 17 for the Lakers? Who you think is a good pick in that range? Around your big board, you've got guys like Bilal Coulibaly, who I think may go higher than that. Gregory Jackson, Noah Clowney is an interesting one for them. Dereck Whitehead. Who are you thinking for the Lakers?
Do we want to unmute him?
I can't unmute him. Yeah, Leaf, unmute your mic.
My fault. I would look for shooting at 17, because you had the luxury of having ball dominant players who can control the game, like LeBron James and Anthony Davis. For all the shortcomings of Anthony Davis's health, LeBron James is getting older. They still dominate a basketball game. So I would look for someone who can space the floor, preferably with some size, and shoot. I'm a little bit lower on a guy like Jet Howard and then the consensus, but he's a phenomenal shooter. Maybe that's where the direction you go. Dereck Whitehead, the concern about him is health. I think if he were healthy all season, he'd likely be a top 10 pick. Like when he was at Montverde Academy, he was a point guard for a team that had Jalen Hood-Schifino, who's supposed to go higher than him. And Dereck Whitehead was significantly better as a high school prospect. And then he shot 43% at Duke. But he's now lower regarded just because he hurt his foot. Maybe he gets healthy, and that's a steal. So I would look for shooting. I like the idea of Clowney. It fits the MO. I think you could play him in a Vanderbilt role for the foreseeable future. And Vanderbilt really helped the Lakers this year. But I would look for shooting if I were looking for a specific trait.
Yeah, they absolutely can use more shooting on this team, and it'll be helped in some ways if they bring back Austin Reeves, if they bring back D'Angelo Russell. They have been linked in trade rumors, I guess sort of in just forever to Buddy Hield. I wish I knew how to quit you of trade rumors, the Lakers and Buddy Hield. But, and there's, I think, a possibility that Indiana could be into a deal like that, but they definitely need more shooting around LeBron and AD to maximize space on the floor. So, when we did our mock draft, for example, I had the Lakers taking Jet Howard. But that was also in part because Dereck Lively, who we had earmarked over at the facility, he went 2 spots before us. So we had to scramble. But Jet Howard, he's a shooter. He also has the Michigan ties. Rob Pelinka, is a teammate of Juwan Howard going back to the Fab 5 days, has probably known Jet since he was like a little boy. So I'm sure there's a comfort level there. That pedigree and knowing what life is like in the NBA, I think can be really helpful. So he's somebody that if they keep the pick, it would not shock me at all if he's available if the Lakers took him.
It's an interesting spot. Adam Silver has taken the podium. Guys, how long should it take for the Wembanyama pick to be put in?
Probably 5 minutes as they make us wait for no reason at all.
It better not be like the Trevor Lawrence draft pick where they couldn't reach him on the phone and it went like a full 10 minutes and they were like, wait a minute, this might be bad. And Trevor Lawrence like kept showing him he didn't look at his phone. I don't think it'll be that bad.
We should get up. We have 5 people at the draft right now in New York. We should ask him if they have eyes on Wemby. Do we know that he's anywhere near there, that he could get there quick enough? That is really funny.
No matter where he's seated, one step is all it takes for him to get to the podium.
Leif, since Wembanyama is going to be the pick, there's about 4 minutes left on the clock for them. What is he going to be able to bring to the Spurs from day one?
I mean, if you look at what Wembanyama is, just in terms of traits, and I'm not saying all these crazy comparisons. Defensively, he's going to be the anchor of a team. Like people will say, oh, he's frail. Like maybe he'll get pushed around by Jokic or Embiid. Who cares? Everyone gets moved around in that sense. How often do you guard the post? He also will be a plus shooter. Maybe not right away as like the best type of shooter, but he's a good shooter. He's someone who'll be able to score on the interior and on the perimeter. And defensively, I think he's more than just a shot blocker. I think he can slide on the perimeter. He also is a good passer. So, I mean, basically, I think you're getting down the road like Jaren Jackson on steroids. And Jaren Jackson Jr. was just the defensive player of the year. And I think there's a world where like he's a better version of Anthony Davis, who is like kind of what just a bit better Jaren Jackson Jr. is. And then I think the floor is close to just Jaren Jackson Jr., who, like I mentioned, is a phenomenal player.
Just the defensive player of the year, like potential all NBA type player is his floor, which is just a wild thing.
Barring injury. I want to say that.
Man. The pick is in at this point. It seems like Wembanyama is going to be the pick. And so now our eyes go to pick number 2, Scoot Henderson versus Brandon Miller. Leif, you've had Scoot Henderson number 2 on your board. You have it right now for a while. Rafael Barlow has had Brandon Miller at number 2, and legitimately not because of fit, but because he thinks is a better player at this point. Is there that big of a gap between these two guys to you to where this is a big issue where a lot of Hornets fans are saying, well, why don't they just take Scoot? He's the better player. Like, do you believe that? Are you in that camp?
I am in the camp that he's the better player. I think he's got more of a chance to be a true superstar than Brandon Miller does. I know Brandon Miller has the fit side like in his favor, but I'm always of the opinion you should go for the best player available, and I buy potential over just like, floor. And I think Brandon Miller might have a higher floor because he's a commodity position where the NBA loves these two-way wings. But Scoot Henderson is the closest thing to Derrick Rose we've seen in a long time. And I think if in most draft classes the past 5-6 years, he'd be the number 1 pick. And so I think people are overthinking it just because of what the NBA loves and covets right now. And they're not looking at the individual player who at 18 and 19 years old was a dominant force in a professional basketball league.
At this point, why is Scoot Henderson closer to Ja Morant or better than Ja Morant than he is to like a Dennis Smith Jr.? Like where does he fall in that, and why is he closer to being like a star player, like you said, than not?
I don't think he's reliant on his athleticism. It just helps that he has it. So Ja Morant's regarded as being a phenomenal facilitator based off intangibles and vision. Scoot Henderson's not quite that type of passer, but he gets everywhere on the floor with this burst, which is athleticism related, but he also knows where to get there and how to change paces. And I think he's more advanced in his mid-range game than any of those like uber athletic guards. Like you think of Derrick Rose, you think of De'Aaron Fox, you think of Russell Westbrook, and none of those guys as rookies were close to what Scoot Henderson was as the G League in what he shot. Like Scoot Henderson wasn't a bad shooter, and no one talks about him being a good shooter, but he really wasn't a bad one. And I think that's an unfair knock just because he's so athletic. People say like, oh, he can do that. But he was 45% on pull-up jumpers as an 18-year-old in the G League. Like that's pretty incredible. Man.
And Scoot Henderson.
I'm not going to let nobody outdog me.
He's going to outdog you. He's got that dog in him. You'd probably be up in your rankings of who's got the dog in him, right, Jake?
You asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Look, I can tell you the Pelicans are sold on him to the point where we're having conversations about trading Zion Williamson. That says something about what someone views him as. And, you hear the Derrick Rose comp. I think that's accurate. And, if you want a guy to kind of build a team around, it definitely feels like a lead guard like that is someone that you can do that. If you want to establish a culture, that's what I've heard, that they feel that guy can do that. So I don't know. To me, the draft starts with the second overall pick and what happens here.
Yeah. Rafael Barlow just tweeted that the Spurs used every bit of the clock, and they have. It's still like I'm watching the stream. He's still not. Wembanyama's still sitting there waving his giant hand like, "Hey, still here, still hanging out." What's the point of using all this clock? Is my question. Is like, what's the point of making us just sit here and wait at this point?
Trolling.
Spurs just trolling everybody. They're just like, hey, we can use it. We might as well. Maybe they're working on other deals, or maybe they're letting the rest of the draft. Maybe they're doing a solid for like the Hornets or the Blazers that have a deal in the works or something. Maybe they're talking to the Pelicans. And they're like, hey, we'll give you all this time as the draft starts, and we'll let you know what we're gonna do. But here we are.
I think JJ Redick just wants to be on TV as long as possible.
Let's put JJ Redick on as much. We got Jay Billis. Andrea Carter, she's a good one. She covers the WNBA really well. I'm surprised to see her on the broadcast, but
she did a lot of college basketball work this year, sideline reporting for like Billis and Schulman.
Yeah, I've seen her mostly on WNBA. I still have not brought Wembanyama up. There are tweets everywhere that he's going to be the pick. We're still waiting on it. Here comes Adam Silver. Hey, he's going to make the pick, and we'll go ahead and just make the pick here. Victor Wembanyama going to the Spurs. Guys, what does this mean for the Spurs going forward? Where do you look at this franchise and say, it feels like we talked about this already because we know this has been the pick for a long time, but how does this change San Antonio and where they are now and where they're going to be now that they have Wembanyama?
I'm annoyed the Pelicans have to play him 4 times a year now.
Yeah,
you are too, probably.
I kind of like it, though, because I know that, like, San Antonio is not that far away. The Riverwalk is nice. I could go hang out down there, and I could go see a Mavs Spurs game. And the Spurs are going to be here.
It's like the third time you've mentioned the Riverwalk here, Nick.
Well, we're talking San Antonio. Name another San Antonio thing. I'm not going to do the Charles Barkley bit. Like, I'm not doing that on this stream. But I know that I'll see Wembanyama at least 2 times a year. But speaking of which, though, Leaf, do you see him having to load manage or having to deal with injuries? A lot of people have brought up like Yao Ming or some of these big guys, Anthony Davis even, that have had these types of injuries that they may have to load manage a guy like him. What do you think about Wembanyama's status, especially in just year 1?
Well, Victor Wembanyama played every single game this year. Like, I know it's not the NBA, but he played about 70 basketball games this year through the French League, through exhibitions, through playing for the French national team. So I can't fault his durability. Like he goes through these rigorous stretches and like plyometrically based exercises as opposed to weights. And I'm not going to doubt the process until proven otherwise. I mean, I think so many people say that just because he's tall, and like Ralph Sampson got hurt, Greg Oden got hurt, but I mean, he's unique. He really is. Did you guys see that he kicked a basketball out from the rim at 10 feet high at 14 years old?
Wembanyama did?
Yeah, so he was in an interview with JJ Redick yesterday, and this is what made me think of it when Jake said JJ Redick needs as much airtime as possible. And he told the story that one time, because he was working on his flexibility, and that's what the actual topic was. He was like, oh yeah, I'm very, very serious about flexibility and plyometrics. But the basketball was wedgied under the rim, and he kicked it out at 14 years old.
Like 1 foot on the ground, or he did like a
he
what is it,
jumped,
a crane kick?
He said he jumped lightly and poked the ball out, landed gracefully.
Please, James Johnson's been doing that for years.
All right,
not impressed.
Top 5 players we think could kick the ball out of a wedgie on the rim.
We know James Johnson can do it. Like, this has been confirmed. I mean, I'm not going to be the one who tells him he can't. That's for sure. But I mean, I think relatively recently, James Johnson has done this. Like, he's a genuine badass. Like a real deal. You don't want to mess with him.
Oh, you definitely don't want to mess with him. I'm old enough to remember when he was on a plane with Josh Richardson to come to Dallas, and he was like, "Don't worry, Dallas, your dogs are coming." And then they were not, in fact, the dogs that the Mavericks needed at all. And here we are still at this point without the Mavericks having any dogs.
Who else could do it? Wembanyama.
Could Gobert just size wise.
I don't see it.
The problem is the flexibility.
I don't think Gobert is coordinated enough to do it. in all honesty.
I got an odd one for you. Lauri Markkanen. He's long. He jumps high. He's pretty coordinated. I'm not saying I actually think he could, but I think he's closer up there than people would think.
If he put his mind to it, LeBron could absolutely do it.
Oh, I mean, yeah. Like, there's several that could kick a ball off of the rim if they just jumped high enough, right? Like maybe both the Thompson twins, they're athletic enough that maybe they could just do it if they jumped high enough.
Shams got a tweet out there.
The tweet now.
Is it Scoot? Come on.
Shams is geez. Do it. I'm playing the thing. After seriously debating Scoot Henderson and Brandon Miller, Charlotte is selecting Brandon Miller at number 2.
By the way,
sorry for the guy in the chat that said no spoilers. This is not that type of stream. We'll go with the tweets.
I tweeted out just now at Cam Brothers, like, Wembanyama was like a done deal at 1 when Shams and Woj didn't even bother trying to beat the other one to it.
Well,
they just sat it out.
Woj on Russillo's podcast this week said that he's not going to tip picks this year. He decided he's going to sit out of it. What are your thoughts on tipping picks? Are you guys for it or against it?
I hate it. I can't
stand it. Love it.
Leif, you wish we would just wait for the TV to show it?
Yes. I loved when I was a little kid guessing the picks. I love guessing the picks, and then when it happens, I feel like a genius.
Let me tell you, you can still guess the pick. You want to guess the third one? You can guess it now.
I mean, I've guessed a lot of these picks. I looked at some betting lines and made some picks, and it's not my favorite thing to see it spoiled on the Twitter timeline. I tried to turn it off, but I just can never avoid it.
The best part of it, though, the only reason I loved it is because you'd see like the gymnastics Woj was doing in his phrasing.
It was the best.
That was the best. Like he
got a laser on.
He leaned so into I'm going to do the thing I'm not supposed to do, but I'm technically not going to break the rules. It was lovely. I loved it. It was awesome. It was just theater.
Leif, what are the Hornets getting in Brandon Miller then? What kind of player is he? We know that
my goat of basketball is Paul George.
His goat of basketball is Paul George. What are they getting in Brandon Miller?
A light version of Paul George, perhaps. This is not hindsight. If you guys know Tony Jones of The Athletic, he was on Locked on Jazz with me a little bit ago, and he's very knowledgeable at the draft. We play pickup basketball a lot this summer. And him and I had a conversation about Brandon Miller being the best college basketball prospect in July of this past year. And we both said he's Paul George with a little less athletic. And that's what I still think he is. I think he's a mix of Paul George and Danny Granger. So in terms of, but beyond comparing players, which I've done for the top 3, but I probably won't do beyond this. I would say he is the most talented wing scorer in this class. He's someone who can score from all 3 levels, is an underrated facilitator, and underrated defender. I don't think he's got the top-tier athleticism that Paul George possessed when he was with Indiana that separated him. And that's why I have a harder time seeing him being like that upper echelon star. But I think he's going to be someone who contends to be an all-star for years and years to come, just based on he's 6'9", scores the ball at will, and impacts the game even when he's not scoring the basketball.
And we did this a little earlier, but tell me the difference between Brandon Miller and Scoot Henderson. Are the Charlotte Hornets? Let's do the thing. You want to do the whole? Let's do the whole first take thing. Are the Charlotte Hornets making the biggest mistake they could ever make in the draft yet again? Are they making a mistake not taking Scoot Henderson?
That's blasphemy, Nick.
Yeah, tell me why.
I think they are making a mistake just because I think there's more superstar potential with Scoot Henderson. It's not like LaMelo Ball being there is the biggest deterrent for someone that you think is a better player, because LaMelo could move on from the Hornets. He could have injury issues, as he's already established that he's had. So I would have taken the player that I thought had a higher chance to be a true superstar and transcend what my franchise is, which has been kind of stuck in purgatory for years now. Like since the Hornets have been created, I don't think they've made a conference finals. And so
they made a second round.
I think they've made 1 or 2 second rounds, but I'm not certain of that either. But my point is, if you're going to compete in an NBA where it's becoming more egalitarian, there are more stars going to different teams, why not draft one organically that you think could be a top-notch star? And I think Brandon Miller's got a chance to be a perennial all-star candidate, but I don't think he's the guy that can elevate a franchise by himself. And now you don't know who's your guy. Is it LaMelo Ball or is it Brandon Miller? Whereas I think if Scoot was there, Scoot's got that, like, I'm that guy personality. And I think he probably would have been that guy.
The Hornets last made the second round in 2002. Can anyone name any players on that team? Jamal Mashburn, Baron Davis, David Wesley, Jamal McGlure, who made an all-star. PJ Brown, who will haunt Andy's dreams at some point because of his Celtics run. What do you guys think about Michael Jordan having say in this pick, even though he's selling the team and he's like on his way out? And like, it's weird to me that he had final say in this pick, and yet he's on his way out and not going to be the owner anytime, like sometime soon.
Said, guys, I will sell my portion, but I need one last chance to screw up a draft. Thank you. You got to give me one. You got to give me one last screw up, then I'm out.
And Leaf thinks he screwed it up. Jake, thoughts?
Look, I would have taken Scoot, but like Brandon Miller's still good. Like I don't want this to sound like we're like this prospect is like terrible, right? Like it's okay they did this sort of thing, but it's definitely weird that it was like Jordan has final say. I don't know, their whole draft process seems a little strange to me. You had Kupchak saying we're drafting for fit, then it's like we're not actually drafting for fit because we're not in position. I
think they just lie so much of those pressers all the
time.
Look,
I learned a big lesson last year, right? It was Jabari Smith Jr. for 2 months, then 15 hours before the draft. Right. It was like, oh, and it's Paolo Banchero, who they've had number one the whole way.
Woj even reported, he's like, it's going to go in this order. Jabari Smith, Chet Holmgren, Paolo, and then it didn't. Leaf, make your prediction before I say who the pick is.
I believe this will be Scoot Henderson.
That's correct. With the third pick in the draft, the Portland Trailblazers select Scoot Henderson, according to Shams Charania. Still waiting on the actual broadcast to do it. And Jake, this means that there's no trade, possibly, or could be.
As of this second, like I would give it maybe another 5 minutes or something if they can hammer out a deal. But I talked about it on my show today. It just comes down to how valuable you view Zion Williamson, and if you have big question marks around him, you are going to need the Pelicans to include other things in the deal, whether that's Herb Jones, whether that's Trey Murphy, whether that's other picks, and that might just be too rich for New Orleans to even go after the guy that they want. And so if this pick stays with Portland, if Scoot Henderson stays there, it just means that price was too high, and New Orleans didn't value Scoot Henderson that much, because I'm sure there was a trade out there they could have done to get the deal done.
What I thought was interesting were these reports that there was at least some conversation between the Clippers and the Blazers involving Paul George, which I'm assuming would have been like the number 3 and Simons and whatever else would be needed for Paul George and maybe something coming back. But like you would need Simons in there to make the money work. And at some point, if Portland is serious about doing something to win now for Dame, I think they have to trade Simons, like whether it's in this draft or just down the line, because you've already seen, and I like Simons, he can play, but you've already seen with Dame and CJ that a backcourt of that size with defensive liabilities in both of them, like your ceiling gets maxed out huge. Like it's okay if one of them is a defensive issue, but if they both are, and, Simons is no better along those lines than McCollum was. So that to me seemed like the guy that no matter what Portland does one way or another, for all the focus on the number 3 pick, I think it actually comes down to Simons.
It's an interesting spot that they're in. Woj just tweeted that all along the entire Charlotte Hornets organization has been all in on Brandon Miller. Ownership, front office, scouts, coaches, they see him as a perennial future all-star player. There's a lot of talk about their drafts, like their draft workouts, where he went and he didn't look very good in the first one, and then he came back and he did look a lot better. Leaf, what do you think about those draft workouts and Brandon Miller's whole process with the Hornets that after Woj saying that they've been all in on Brandon Miller this whole time?
Well, around the combine, Brandon Miller was a hard man to find, and then eventually he showed up on one of the later days, and he had tonsillitis and it was sick. And he showed up out of shape. And so the rumor was Brandon Miller is out of shape. He's lazy. He's not a good basketball player right now. And we found out that he was sick. And so I think a lot of those early workouts were in reference to the workouts he conducted just because he had to, and he tried to play through, but he was sick. And I think that also impacted a guy like Gigi Jackson, who we found out was sick when he did his pro day. And I was like, I was as high as anyone on Gigi Jackson. I was like, man, what is wrong with him? He just looks absolutely gassed. And so I think that really matters more than people think, because I saw it firsthand. I was sitting in the front row watching his pro day, and I could not understand for the life of me how a professional athlete at 18 years old was tired from shooting drills. And then it made sense. So I also think he's a guy who's going to get undervalued for poor workouts, because a lot of those that are valued happened when he was sick.
This is a great point in the chat. Woj seems to be directly contradicting Shams with that tweet. When Shams was saying they're debating between Scoot and Brandon Miller, what's the point of Charlotte trying to play coy with, well, are we taking Scoot Henderson? Or are we taking Brandon Miller? Who could they be after here? Anybody? Thoughts? Takers? It's a smokescreen.
Does anyone smell anything smoky?
Smokescreen season.
I mean, it's just about trying to create even 3% more leverage to create a deal or whatever, if you were looking to do something like just that little bit of uncertainty that you can create, that maybe if anybody thought they were going to take Scoot, particularly Portland, like for what they're looking to do, like you're trying to leverage something out of another team you could be looking to deal with. Or who knows? I mean, maybe they would be looking to trade with a team that isn't Portland. You know what I mean? Like it could have had a deal that had nothing to do with Portland. So, I mean, it's all just, I mean, unless you're talking about like a situation with San Antonio and Wembanyama, where you can't create a smoke screen, like nobody's going to believe anything you're faking over this. You always try to create some degree of mystery and opaqueness about what you're doing, just because it works to your advantage.
All right, Leif, make your pick for make your prediction for the fourth one, since you don't want it spoiled before I tell it to you.
I'll go with Amen Thompson at 4.
That is correct. With the 4th pick in the draft, Amen Thompson will be taken by the Houston Rockets via Chris Haynes, who was wrong about the Chris Paul thing earlier this offseason. So hold that one for a second. What are the Rockets, if they do take Amen Thompson? Leif, what are they getting in Amen Thompson?
A 99th percentile athlete with the ability to create for others. He is deficient as a shooter, but as he is deficient as a shooter, he is that spectacular of an athlete that he's going to be able to create advantages going downhill and being 6'7". So, and then also defensively, he should be good. His ceiling really hinges on if he develops that shot, because eventually that athleticism isn't going to win you everything. Like, think of what Ja Morant is able to do, but then in the playoffs, it becomes harder to do. I think that's the adjustment for Amen Thompson, where he's played inferior competition. So now he's going to play better competition. His athleticism doesn't get him as many advantages. It'll still get him some, but that's what I would say is kind of what you're going to expect from him. Like, you're going to see someone make spectacular plays, and you're going to see some growing pains as well.
They've played together their whole lives, right? Like both of these two. What's the benefit of splitting them up? Because all I've heard about these two guys is, well, they can't shoot. Is splitting them up and having like actual spacing around them really going to help him? Like, he's going to have some spacing with the Rockets. He's got shooters around him.
I don't know if it necessarily benefits anyone to separate those two players, because they're both spectacular defenders and people who can play off of one another, obviously. I mean, he's going to have Jalen Green with him. That's a really, really good player to pair with. I think Alperen Şengün being a secondary facilitator is really helpful. And Jabari Smith is someone that they can run pick and pops with. I don't like, people thought this was a redundant pick, but I think it makes sense, because you take the best player available. You find a guy who is good at passing. Like, that's important, because this Rockets team did not pass. And now you'll have him and Şengün passing, Green scoring, and Smith spacing. It's a talented core. It just depends who they prioritize.
It's going to be interesting now with this court. They've got a bunch of talent. Do you see him starting alongside, if they keep Kevin Porter Jr. and keep him, and then Jalen Green, Amen Thompson, I guess Jabari Smith, and then Şengün? Do you see that lineup actually working and happening now that we know that it's Amen Thompson?
I don't think they'll necessarily win a lot immediately, but I think that's the way it's going to go.
It's an interesting lineup. They do lack, I guess. Well, they have shooting. Şengün can shoot. Porter Jr. has been a good shooter. if Amen Thompson and Sengun are like your playmakers, that may change some things for him. I think the change in coaching for the Rockets is going to be a big deal too. We have Jackson Gatlin at the draft right now, and we'll see if he's able to join us a little bit. But yeah, this is an interesting pick to me. I'm curious to see what Houston does. Do they still go after James Harden? Jake, is that something that you would look at now that they've made this pick, that they still go after a James Harden? They've been rumored for Kyrie Irving. They've been rumored for like all these guards because they've got a ton of money to spend.
They do. That's like the biggest trap I think a young team like that could fall into, right? When you look at this new CBA, especially, there's 7 teams with cap space this year, and there's probably not going to be more than that really ever again in any offseason, and you kind of see free agency not exist like it used to here. That cap space can be used. You can rent out that cap space and get future assets. So why pay James Harden $40 million to take minutes away from some of the young guys that you've drafted when you could be using that to get future picks to make a run at, a not aging superstar that, doesn't show up in the playoffs at times?
I just would never set up a situation where James Harden is supposed to be the leader of your team.
Exactly.
That to me is the deal breaker right there. Like, whatever you think of James Harden as a player, his strengths, his weaknesses, if you think, some of the playoff stuff's been overblown, whatever, like the one thing that has been established is he's not a leader. And that, that in certain respects is fine. Like if somebody else is there to do the leading, then okay. Like leadership is hard. It's not for everybody. And that's fine. But if James Harden is on that team, if he's not leading, nobody's leading. And I would not want that guy around there to be the leader. I wouldn't want him to be around there to be the example setter in terms of lifestyle, shall we say? I don't know what they would be thinking if they're going to bring in Harden, unless they're going to trade out some of those young guys and just try to go as ready-made as possible right away.
Thanks everybody for hanging out with us on this stream. This stream, Locked On NBA Draft Live, is presented by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA. We've all been sent bird dogs, right? Like, does anybody have a favorite Bird Dogs item of clothing that you love wearing?
I'm wearing a pair right now, actually. I got they're light blue. They've got the lining. I'm not standing up. I know what you were going to ask here. They're awesome, man.
All right. Well, the copy says that they give you a slimmer fit and then make your legs truly sculpted. So I just wanted to see if it was true or not that it gave you a truly sculpted look, Jake. So
can confirm.
Go check out birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA. They'll give you a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA. Again, for a free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. They've got the shorts that Jake is wearing right now. They have joggers. They have pants, all kinds of other stuff with the lining in it. You don't have to wear underwear with them. I won't ask Jake if he is wearing underwear in them or not. I tend to wear underwear with mine. But you can go, again, check it out. birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA. Back here on the Locked On NBA Draft Live, Nick Angstadt from the Locked On Mavericks podcast, Locked On NBA. Leif Thulin from Locked On NBA Big Board. Jake Madison, Locked On Pelicans, has been hanging out with me. Andy Kamenetsky, Locked On Lakers, has been hanging out. Amen Thompson just got drafted. He's walking around. He's shaking hands, kissing babies. We still don't know what the 5th pick is. So Leif's getting his way without the picks being tipped. They haven't been tipped just yet with Amen Thompson. Any thoughts on this top 4 so far? It's pretty chalk so far, Leif.
Yeah, it's as expected. I think there was some interest for Cam Whitmore for the Rockets a couple days ago, at least reportedly, and that would have made very interesting because the 5th pick, the Pistons don't have a need for a point guard, and so that could have really created some chaos going down the draft. But as it's gone, as kind of we knew the top 4 was going to be the same top 4 as soon as the lottery was announced.
I wanted to know about Cam Whitmore. Why does it seem like he's falling? Because it seemed like in the last couple of days on mock drafts and stuff everywhere, it seems like he's the one that has fallen out of this top 5. He was the 5th player on a lot of people's boards, and all of a sudden he was just falling down.
I think there's a concern about medical. I think there's a concern about his knee that he injured in high school, I believe, and how that may deter someone who's one of his best traits is athleticism. And then I'm I'm hearing that he's introverted, and so people are saying, I don't know if this actually has any truth, but this is what's floating around the draft world, is that because he's introverted, they're not getting these like rave review interviews, and he's not like blowing them out of the water, as opposed to an extrovert would be more comfortable in that setting. I'd imagine the one that's closer to the truth is probably the knee is causing concern, and he maybe didn't perform great in a few workouts. I still have a hard time imagining he truly falls to like 8 or 9. But there's a way it could happen if Jarace Walker's the pick at 7. Maybe Whitmore goes 8, and if he goes to the 9 and the Jazz don't take him, I'm going to be very disappointed.
Rafael Barlow, Locked On NBA Big Board. His latest mock draft, the one he dropped today, has Cam Whitmore going 11, which is like just is blowing my mind. But he has a quote from a scout here. You have to subscribe to NBA Big Board. It's a great Substack. He said from a scout, quote, "Teams tend to overthink things. They knew coming into this process that Cam was a really quiet kid, that he doesn't smile a lot. He isn't going to wow you with his interviews. If that's the reason he falls, some team is going to get a top 5 player that falls into their laps. I'm curious to see where he goes." Leaf, make your prediction for the 5th pick, because we know what it is, according to Shamshrani.
I'm going to go with Ausar Thompson.
According to Jake Fisher, I think he got it first, that Ausar Thompson is Detroit's pick at number 5. The other Thompson twin goes off the board. Again, this seems to be chalk. All apologies need to be sent to Kuka Hill of Locked On Pistons. He made this pick in our Locked On mock draft. We made those picks like 6 weeks ago, guys. It feels like we made them so long ago, but he made this pick. Leaf, what are they getting with Ausar Thompson going to the Pistons at 5?
Another fabulous athlete who fits what Troy Weaver, his MO is. It's athleticism. He fits in. He'll run. He'll play alongside the speed of Jaden Ivey, the control, the intelligence of Cade Cunningham, the sheer athleticism of Jalen Duren. And I think he fits in well. Now, if Whitmore hadn't have had this like spell of slipping down the draft, I'd have anticipated this would have been his pick. The interesting thing about that fit is that Ausar Thompson, I believe, has the capacity to play point guard. And now he will never get to show that if he's with the Pistons. And so I'd imagine that he would have preferred another pick, but this is a conducive to winning environment where he can just play defensively / play quickly and be the beneficiary of good ball in hand creators. But I think his individual stock, like what he could make him the best, would have been going to a team that would have given him the reins.
What do we think about this Pistons core now? Like this Pistons young core, they have Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey. They've got Jalen Duren, who's good. They have now Ausar Thompson. What are our thoughts on this collective group now, with Monty Williams making all of the money to coach this young squad?
All of the money. It is crazy how much money he's making. Like that. It is the high. Am I correct? That is the highest contract ever for a coach.
Well, if it gets up to $100 million, it has to be, right? Like that's the incentives. But even what was it, like 6 years, 78? That still just sounds like it's more than we've ever seen.
I mean, it lets you know, if nothing else, that Detroit believes in the core that they have, but they also feel like we need someone really specific to shepherd it to the next level. Make it clear, I don't think Draymond Green is going to end up in Detroit, but I understand why those rumors, or that narrative even starts, because like you need somebody there that they can take cues from. You know, it's the opposite of what I was talking about with why, if I'm Houston, I don't bring in James Harden. Like Detroit, I think they have a lot of promise. It would be helpful for them if they could find a veteran who's been around some winning that isn't going to be, I guess, bored or dissatisfied being a part of a team that he knows isn't going to do a lot of winning immediately.
It's an interesting spot to be in, the Pistons right now. But they've got a nice core all of a sudden. They've got Bogdanovich still there. He's kind of been around some winning a little bit with his runs with the Jazz, Leaf.
Yeah, it feels though like with Bogdanovich that
I don't know if that was a shot or not, Nick, but I didn't like it.
Okay, his run with the Pacers then.
Yeah. Or even
it's hard though. I think it's hard though. It's all joking aside. I think it's hard for someone like to think of Bogdanovich as that veteran when you know he could get traded. Like when you know that he's as much potential trade bait as he is veteran presence.
Yeah, but this is a really nice young core. What do you think about the combination of Cade Cunningham, Ausar Thompson, now Jaden Ivey? What do you think about that trio? Is that your backcourt, or is that two guards and a wing? How do you see those fitting? Because you said Ausar Thompson could be a point guard. He just probably won't get to now with these three guys that can handle the ball.
Yeah, I like the core. I'd be disappointed if I were Ausar Thompson in the sense that, you know what, I think I could be an all-star caliber player if I'm given the reins somewhere else, because I'm an unbelievable defender and I've got better playmaking than people know, with 6 assists per game and being the MVP despite my brother getting all the shine. That said, I think this is a fun core. I mean, Cade Cunningham, people forget how unbelievably good he is. I still think Cade Cunningham's the best prospect from that class, even though Scotty Barnes won the Rookie of the Year and Jalen Green gets a lot of shine as well. So now you got that, Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren, who it baffles me that last year he fell to 13. I had him number 6 on my big board. When he fell to 13, I thought it was beyond my comprehension. And so that's what really confuses me, is that, he goes down there. So now Ausar Thompson fits in. I don't think he's a perfect fit in a jigsaw puzzle, but you take a really athletic player and you have a lot of pieces. I think they'll be good soon. I think Monty Williams might win Coach of the Year is my early prediction, because this team's going to overperform.
Leaf, make your prediction for the 6th pick, because it is now in.
This is where it actually begins, and I'm going to go with Anthony Black.
You are correct. It is Anthony Black out of Arkansas. He is now the 6th pick to Orlando. This is a really fascinating one to me. Anthony Black is, we've done a lot of work on him on Locked On Mavs. We thought maybe he would fall to 10, or maybe he would, the Mavs would find some kind of trade for him. But he's a bigger guard. He's going to have a hard time shooting. It's going to be an interesting fit for him with the Magic. Leaf, what does Anthony Black bring to the Magic day one?
Just an absolutely tenacious on-ball defender, someone who can create and make life easier for his teammates. And he doesn't need the ball to be someone who really thrives. He's not going to wow you with scoring. Even if he hits his absolute peak, he's not going to be a top scorer. And that's Banchero on this team, and then Wagner. So I like this fit. I mean, there's redundancy everywhere littered across the Magic roster. So there was no pick where you wouldn't be well, they already have a player. But I think he's the direction that they'll head. They'll prioritize him over Jalen Suggs, because I think he's more of a natural point guard than is Suggs, and Cole Anthony for that matter. But I wouldn't have picked this pick based off fit. But right. I just kind of knew that this was where they were going based off all the rumors.
Is he the 6th best player in this draft then? Because you don't have him there.
I can see him getting there. I actually had him very high at the start of the basketball season, and I lowered him even down to around 10, just because I heard a lot of is this Michael Carter Williams? Is this someone who won't be able to adapt to the NBA? And then I started watching again, and I was like, you know what? Everything he does is positive for this team. He has an unbelievable workload for Arkansas on offense and defense, and he's the best player on both ends. So I like it. I didn't put him as number 6 because I just don't think his star power upside is as high as the people I have ahead of him. And I believe at the top of the draft, you try to get a star. So I prioritize upside.
Yeah, we took him 10th to the Mavericks in the Locked On mock draft. We had a couple of trades that fell through, but we ended up just taking Anthony Black because he fell to us, and we were like, hey, we'll just take this guy because we'll bet on some of that upside. We'll bet on Rafael Barlow said that he's one of the smartest players in the draft, one of the best perimeter defenders in the draft. You're getting a really good player here. I'm interested to see how he fits now with his young core in Orlando, guys. How do you see him fitting now? He's a guy that can't shoot really well. He's got to figure out his shot. It's got a hitch in it. It's got some weird motion to it, but how do we see him fitting into this Magic group that has Paolo Banchero, that has Franz Wagner, that has guys that handle the ball and Markelle Fultz and Jalen Suggs and Cole Anthony? The ball's not going to be in his hands.
Up Orlando's roster.
It'll just be an interesting fit for them. But they're on the rise. They were 500 after the All-Star break. This is a team that I'm really looking at next year to make a push for the play-in. To I think Philip Rossman-Reich was on that for the whole end of the season. He was trying to get them to get in the play-in and try. If someone could will them into the play-in, I think Philip Rossman-Reich was going to do it. But what do we think about his fit now? A player that struggles to shoot, but isn't going to have the ball in his hands now.
Teach him to shoot. It's
I
as
had
simple as that, right? That's just a thing people can do.
I've had a couple of people say, like, give me some examples of guys that couldn't shoot in college but could now shoot in the NBA. And I'm like, all right, Kawhi Leonard. Okay, Jason Kidd learned it during his career. You could look at centers.
Lonzo
like
Ball did.
Lonzo Ball, true. Like, he had a good...
He ended up being
a good shooter
shot pretty
with
well
New
at
Orleans,
UCLA, though.
I
did.
used to do Lakers pregame for 710 ESPN, the Lakers radio affiliate. So I would be out there when Lonzo, this is back when he was a rookie, second year, was with the Lakers, and he'd be doing his pregame warmups. And I'm sure you guys have all been to pregame warmups. These guys are taking these shots unguarded. They make everything. Like, everything goes down. Like, you'll see JaVale McGee taking like threes and draining them.
Yeah,
Lonzo,
they all hit him.
Right. Lonzo was missing shots regularly. And that's where I knew, like, his shot needs a lot of work because these are unguarded threes and he's missing them. His form was all over the place. His legs would be all over the place. Release point was always different. So,
well, he crossed his arm over. In New Orleans, he completely retooled his shot. Yeah, it was horrible. There was a game where before New Orleans traded for him, they just left him open on the perimeter, and he shot like 2 of 15 from 3. Then he came to New Orleans, redid the shot, and was like, oh, he's good now.
All right.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Leif, make your prediction for the 7th pick because we know that it's in and there's some more.
I'd imagine they take Walker, but I am praying it's Hendricks so the Jazz can have a chance at Whitmore or Walker.
Okay, we know he's not cheating.
You're wrong on both fronts.
Yes.
It's Bilal Coulibaly.
Thank goodness.
And he's going to the Wizards with the 7th pick.
Even better.
They have traded up.
Nick, you've made my day. You've redeemed your bogey comment.
They have traded. I love getting to break the news to Leif. He's like so excited about it.
I'm not looking at my phone. I'm blind.
According to Shams Charania, Indiana selecting Bilal Coulibaly at 7 and trading him to Washington. So now Coulibaly is the player that is rising. I had one of my questions I was going to ask you. Who's the big riser in this draft? And Coulibaly is that guy. All the way up to 7, though, Leif. Is that too high for this guy who's this raw?
If you'd asked that, and this is not hindsight, that would have been my answer. All buzz was indicating he was going to go in the top 10. I looked at some betting odds of where his over-under was 11.5. The under was the obvious play there, and it was nearly even. And then his odds to go in the top 10 was like plus 145. Like that seemed too good to be true. But the question was which team would take him, and I thought it was between the Wizards and the Jazz. So the fact that the Wizards traded up does not surprise me because they felt like they had to get him. The interesting thing now is if the Pacers are at 8, which it seems like they would be, they're still probably going to take Jarace Walker and piss me off. But anyway, I temporarily I'm happy. But I'm not surprised that he rose this high. I think there was too much smoke to not be a fire.
If you're on the Locked On Mavericks feed, Bilal going now 7th above the Mavericks now opens up some opportunities. You could see a Taylor Hendricks. Obviously, like Dereck Lively is probably going to be there. You could see a Cam Whitmore. It could be the guy that falls to 10. Like this could be an opportunity for the Mavericks if there's somebody that, one of these teams below them really, really likes and really, really wants. This is a time where you could take advantage of this. This is so fascinating to me. We don't know what the package is yet. I've not seen it at all. I've seen no reports on what the package could be from the Wizards. I mean, they have a million second-round picks now, right?
It's got to be a future draft pick. Like, there's nothing else that they have. Like,
they're just going from 8 to
on their
7,
roster,
though, right?
or like immediately that seems good for the 7th pick.
It'd be interesting to see if they're swapping picks 8 and 7, or if the Wizards were like, "Hey, let's get 7 and 8 in this draft and like really kick off our rebuild." Because next year's draft, Leaf, is not supposed to be very good, right? And the Wizards are going to be bad in that draft, right? Am I right in saying that draft is not looking to be as good as this one?
Yes, I think some of the top picks, and for reference, G.G. Jackson, a guy who knows where he's going to go, and if he came out in his graduating high school class, the common thought is that he'd be a top 5 pick. So
in next year's draft.
Wow. And so the top guy is an international guy who's now playing for the G League, Matas Buzelas. And I saw him in the facility working out. I didn't actually get to see his workout, unfortunately. But Richard Stamen and I saw him at the combine, and we were like, man, like this guy's probably $190 soaking wet. Like this may not be the athlete you typically assume with the number 1 pick. He may be phenomenal. I haven't watched a ton of film, but it's just not like there's not the depth in that class.
Washington is sending 2 second-round picks to the Pacers, and we know Washington's pick, or we know the Pacers pick at 8. Are you ready, Leif Thulin?
It's a weird trade.
I think they'll take Jarace Walker, but I hope they take Taylor Hendricks. Or do they take Whitmore? But anyway,
the Indiana Pacers, according to Shams Charania, are selecting Jarace Walker at the 8th pick. With the 8th pick. This was what I saw in every mock. I feel like every mock draft from the start of the draft process to now had Jarace Walker going to the Pacers. What are the Pacers getting? Why are you upset that the Pacers are getting Jarace Walker and not the Jazz, Leif?
Well, because I think that he's going to be the second best defender in this class, which is littered with phenomenal athletes, and that the first being Wembanyama. So that's a really transcendent defender. I think offensively, he's got more than just a 3-and-D potential. I've likened him to Paul Millsap with more potential. And I think he's someone that could fit in between a lot of front courts. Like for the Jazz, I thought he would have been amazing in between Markkanen and Kessler. I think for the Pacers, you're going to get a lot of different players that could play with him because he's going to be unselfish. He'll be able to score. And I think I don't personally believe this, but someone I really respect said if he hits his 100% outcome, he could be Kawhi Leonard.
Wow. Which we didn't think Kawhi Leonard would be Kawhi Leonard coming out of the draft either. He's one of the ones I mentioned earlier that didn't really have a shot in college and then had to learn it, which Jarace Walker would have to as well.
He shot 35% as a freshman playing alongside a veteran-laden team. Like, I don't think his shot's really a glaring weakness. I think it's kind of a misnomer at this point.
Well, yeah, it's just not like a key strength like a Kawhi Leonard that we think of now. Like he's a mid-range assassin going out and doing that. This is a fascinating part of the draft now. What do we think about swapping picks for 2 second-rounders? Like just doing that, Jake?
Was Indiana gonna take Coulibaly? Like, why do you need to do this trade? Were they having negotiations with another team? I'm guessing, and the Wizards knew that.
So Indiana got a couple second-round picks and went down from 7 to 8. So they got some. They got some.
No, I get that. But okay, so why do you need to move up one spot to get your guy here?
Oh, yeah. Why did the Wizards have to do this?
Right? Like, why did the Wizards have to do? Yeah, that's what I mean. Why did the Wizards have to do this trade unless they had a feeling that Indiana was trading that pick to someone else for them to take Coulibaly, right? Like, that's also, it, isn't it?
I mean, Indiana's been trading a lot of picks.
Yeah.
So they might have thought that it was believable that they've been moving stuff around.
Yeah, like that's got to be the rationale behind it. And I don't think 2 second-round picks to go up and like make sure you get your guy is like that steep of a price. So it's fine. It's just like whenever you see someone move up one spot, it's a slightly weird trade to me.
Leif, can you tell me why the Wizards would take Coulibaly when they have so many needs? Like it seems like taking a 3-and-D guy, that's not necessarily one of your foundational pieces necessarily. And I feel like they need foundational pieces, and I thought Cam Whitmore could be that. Maybe they don't think that.
Well, I think if you look at all the traits, maybe Coulibaly, you could spin it, that has the best possible outcome. Like, and maybe because they've got a clean slate, a tabula rasa, maybe they go for him. And they just say, we're going to bet on our development. I thought it was peculiar, especially trading up, but it makes less sense now unless Cam's medicals are bad. Now I'm horribly stressed, guys.
Yeah, because now the Jazz are technically going to be on the clock because we know the Wizards pick is we know this trade has happened. And now the Wizards are getting Bilal Coulibaly at 7. The Pacers are going to get Jarace Walker at 8. We don't know what the Jazz are doing. The pick is in for the Wizards, I guess, on the actual draft clock because now it's all messed up with this trade. But here we are with it. Yeah, Leif is all flustered and doesn't know what to do. Who do you want the Jazz to take here at 9?
Cam Whitmore, like easily. Like I would be thrilled. I just don't think they will. I think if he's slipping, the Jazz aren't going to be the team that takes him. Maybe Danny Ainge has bamboozled everyone. Where I feel like in Utah, the thought is that Cam Whitmore is not someone the Jazz are horribly interested in. I don't know this, but it feels like the thought. Right now, if you ask me honestly who I think the Jazz are going to take, my gut is telling me it's going to be Bufkin. And I don't even dislike Kobe Bufkin, but please, oh, please take Cam Whitmore.
There's been weird stuff about Kobe Bufkin, right? Like I've heard Kobe Bufkin like turned down a bunch of like workouts and was just kind of out. And like, hasn't there been weird pre-draft like process stuff with Kobe Bufkin, Leif?
Yes, but what the thing is, he's wowing teams, but he's hiding. It's like Shaedon Sharpe last year. He hid from people, and then he's wowed people by just some traits. So I don't know what he's doing, but I know I'd be very shocked if Hendricks is the pick here. And I would tell you with pretty good confidence, it's going to be between Cam and Kobe Bufkin. Who knows? Ainge is notorious for trying to keep everyone in the dark, but I really hope it's Cam Whitmore.
Andy, do you have any disdain still for Danny Ainge? Just hearing his name, does that still irk you just a little bit?
I just always think about Pat Riley's press release to Danny Ainge that I can't repeat on these airs because David Locke won't allow it. Just
no, not on this.
Google Pat Riley, Danny Ainge press release, kids, and you can see exactly what I'm referring to. But he's always the first thing. That and Robert Horry remaining to this day proud that he threw that towel in Ainge's face. Like, and I think he said, I think he was asked one time, like, if he had any regrets about it, and he said something to the degree of that it wasn't a brick.
Nick.
Leaf, make the prediction at 9. Utah has selected. They have not traded.
I bet we take Bufkin. I pray it's Cam Whitmore.
Leaf looks like all those kids that watch college football games that are like hoping their team wins.
Been there.
The player that the Jazz are taking with the 9th pick, according to Shamstrania, Taylor Hendricks out of UCF. Taylor Hendricks going to, we gotta see Leaf's face. Taylor Hendricks.
You're kidding.
There's
got to be a trade.
Utah Jazz.
There's got to be a trade.
Why is it got to be a trade? What does Taylor Hendricks not have that you? What does Taylor Hendricks have that you don't want? I guess on the Jazz now.
I don't even dislike him. He's my 9th player on the board. I just don't. I by all indications that I heard, that the Jazz thought he had limited upside. But the thing is, there were no real clear reports. It was the Jazz didn't someone said Hendricks had already worked out for the Jazz. Some had already said Hendricks had not. And so that, to me, the question is, okay, if he hadn't worked out for the Jazz, then they're not going to take him. If he has worked out and there's this seemingly disdain for him, then I figured that wasn't going to be the pick. So honestly, this is a far better outcome for my love of the Utah Jazz, because I think he fits nicely. I think he's got a limited upside. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
If you remember last year, I made this point about Jabari Smith Jr. I would never have taken him 1. And this is not hindsight whatsoever. Nick can attest to this.
Yeah, he did.
I said I don't want a Rashard Lewis who can play defense as my superstar. In this case, at 9, I'm fine with that outcome. And it allows for the Jazz to go for players at 16 that are guards, where the strong suit of the draft is. So I honestly am fine with this outcome. I'm just flabbergasted it's what happened.
Which is it's a very mundane thing for it to happen too, because Taylor Hendricks you have him as the 9th player. He's there. It seems like it would fit. But now Cam Whitmore slides to the Mavericks are up at 10 now, which is just a weird spot to be in if you're the Mavericks, which is kind of found money. If we go back to Rafael Barlow talking to an agent recently, he said that some team is going to get a top 5 player that falls in their lap. That's where the Dallas Mavericks are right now. We did a podcast episode a couple of days ago. Which players would fall to 10 that you would absolutely have to take, that you would look at all the trade back options, you'd look at every other trade and thing that you have if you're the Dallas Mavericks and say, all right, I don't know if we can do this because this player is just too good. Leaf, is Cam Whitmore that type of player? Because Isaac and I both agreed that he would be, that the Cam Whitmore would be a player that, hey, just throw everything out and take this guy because you're getting a steal.
Yes, I would. I mean, I have him number 5 on my board. If his knee's not a degenerative health issue, I think he's a spectacular athlete with about as much scoring potential as anyone in this draft, excluding Scoot Henderson, Victor Wembanyama, and Brandon Miller.
What's the deal with his knee? What has he gone through? What's the injury? Do we know? Did he miss games? Anything on that?
I don't know. He missed games with a thumb injury. The knee is high school stuff, so I don't know what was discovered. I just heard through the grapevine and then Twitter found it as well, that Cam's knee was an issue, and that's part of the reason he was slipping. So maybe it is something like AJ Griffin, where the knee is something that really, really drops his stock. And maybe because he's so athletic, maybe they're like, man, he can't do it this long. And that makes a little bit of sense to me. But if he's able to do what his body has the capacity or had the capacity to do, he's a phenomenal basketball player.
Oh my gosh! Someone just asked in the Mavs chat, "How fast is your heart beating?" My heart is beating very fast, and they went to commercial on the stream. So we're sitting here trying to figure out what they're gonna do with this pick. The Locked On NBA Live Draft Live is presented by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA. Enter the promo code LockedOnNBA to get a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA. You won't want to take off your Bird Dogs. They're great shorts, great pants, all of that. My commercial was much shorter than the stream. So now we're trying to figure out who the Mavericks take. I was biding time, Andy. Could you tell? Andy's a pro. He knows that I was sitting there.
Oh, I have vamped with the best of them, Nick.
Biding time until we know the Mavericks pick. The thing is, I asked Nico Harrison, is there any way, before the draft, like 2 hours ago, I asked him, is there any way you could explain to fans how many possibilities you're looking at with this 10th pick? This was before the draft and all this. He said it's innumerable. Like you can't imagine how many possibilities that we're looking at. Just talking to different teams, talking to different agents, and trying to figure out, all right, could we get this trade happen here? They're looking at trade down, trade out of the draft, like select players. Like think about all the players that are available there. And now you have Cam Whitmore fall to your lap in the 10th pick. This is a wild spot because the Mavericks absolutely need a win now player. They need somebody that can come in and just win now. I don't know that Cam Whitmore is that guy, right? Like he's 6'7". He's got a 6'8" wingspan. He's a decent defensive player, Leaf, right? Like, but he's not your shut down one of the best defenders in this draft. There's just too many guys that are too good at that. He's not going to do that day one. And so you have this guy now that like could be, an incredible talent that you could pick. Oh my gosh. Shams hasn't tweeted in 5 minutes, and it's making me nervous trying to figure out who they're going to pick with this spot. But
I'd imagine a trade might happen. Someone might trade up and say we want Cam Whitmore, and the Mavericks are like, you know what, that's fine. We'll move down a couple spots and get Dereck Lively. Like that. That's what I would do.
Which this is the option you have. It's like, hey, this player could be good enough that we just have to take him, or could be good enough that another team will overpay for this. Maybe you get the Clint Capello and 15 trade that you really wanted, first of all, and that Brad Rowland laughed at on Locked On Hawks recently. He was like, hey, we're not going to do that just for 10 and Davis Bertans or something like that. But here we are now. Maybe if Cam Whitmore is super high on some of these guys' boards, the Hawks board or somebody, then yeah. But yeah, they're going to use their entire 5 minutes, I think, the Mavericks are now, because they've got so many opportunities in front of them. They got so many things they could do. We know now, according to Woj, that Washington is sending Indiana a 2028 second-round pick, and Phoenix's 2028 second-round pick. That Phoenix one in 2028 could actually be pretty good. That's 5 years from now.
Yeah, it's interesting, too. Just the final details of the Beal trade came out, and it turns out, like, the Wizards are getting 6
seconds.
They're getting 6 seconds, but also the pick swaps that they get, they're more than were originally reported, and they go longer than were originally reported. Like, all of a sudden, I'm not going to say that they got a haul for Beal, but that trade looks better when you take into account also they're getting rid of that money. Like, it.
I'm cutting you off, Andy, because Shams Charania just reported that Oklahoma City is acquiring Cason Wallace from Dallas at the 10th pick. Dallas is trading Davis Bertans and Cason Wallace at 10 to Oklahoma City. So they get off Davis. They're trading 10. Oklahoma gets Cason Wallace. We don't know what the Mavericks are getting at this point. Oklahoma City has the 12th pick, so they could be getting the 12th pick in this. And I'm assuming the Mavericks are going down, but do the Mavericks get anything back in this? They've got to get some kind of value. Is the only value that they get Davis Bertans off their books, which is a win for them. That's $17 million off the books this year, probably $5 million off the books next year. Mark Stein is saying the Mavericks will trade number 10 Cason Wallace and Davis Bertans to Oklahoma City. Then the Oklahoma City sends 12 and a traded player exception to Dallas as part of this trade. So it doesn't look like the Mavericks are getting any kind of player. They're just getting off of the contract, which, hey, going from 10 to 12 is not that big of a deal. To get off of a contract. Then
if they like 3 players still on the board, it's worth doing that to get Bertans off the books. I have no problem with that at all.
And now on the Locked On Mavericks feed, we say goodbye to the Latvian Laser. Thank you for everything that you've given us. Pew, pew, pew. Will not be said by Mark Follow or Derek Harper anymore. So thank you very much. It is not one of the more optimal trades that you could have made at this spot. I don't think the Mavericks will be done. They get a traded player exception, which is probably pretty good right now with this new salary cap. The people are saying this is unbelievably bad by Dallas. Like, you don't even know what they're doing yet. They just got off of one contract going down 2 picks. Leaf, you think this is that bad?
I'm preoccupied in my head, but I think I actually think what's going to happen is that the 12 pick is going to be traded by OKC to another team trading up, and then it might be attached. Might be attached back to Dallas. Something. That's what I'm thinking. But I'm wondering from the Jazz perspective, if they move up to 12 and go for a guy like Kobe Bufkin or something like that, because I know they want a guard, and then that allows you to have your picking of which guard to go for.
We also know that at 12, Cam Whitmore, Dereck Lively, Grady Dick, Kobe Bufkin, like all those guys are still on the board. So like you said, there could still be another. Be another. Mark Stein said that Dallas takes over the 12th pick from the Thunder, Leaf. So it's not the Thunder's pick anymore. It's Dallas.
I will say this.
Oh, okay, so then you probably take Lively.
This is true. I'm seeing a comment from Krishna. When have the Mavs ever used a traded player exception? This is so bad. Like, forget Mavs. No team ever uses their exception. The exception, not often.
It's not true. There's one that's been used recently.
But like, how often do those exceptions ever get used? They're such an illusion in terms of their utility. They rarely get used.
It's true they never get used. The Mavericks created the biggest one of all time at the time from the Harrison Barnes traded during a game fiasco. But it has been used recently. There's a team that had a really good one that I can't remember who it is, and it's not coming up. It's not coming up on Google right now. But the Dallas Mavericks have the 12th pick now. They're off of Davis Bertans' contract. 12th is still a good spot. Dereck Lively or Cam Whitmore will be there. Kobe Bufkin will be there. There'll be teams that'll be interested in these guys. Well, let's go back to Cason Wallace though. Leaf. Cason Wallace goes to the Oklahoma City Thunder. What are they getting in that guard?
Cason Wallace is a very good point of attack defender who is probably a better shooter than his peers who are defensively oriented in Anthony Black or Ausar Thompson. I don't think he's quite got the guile, the shiftiness that maybe Kobe Bufkin does or Jalen Hood-Schifino in terms of like long-term potential as offensive players if they hit. But I think he's got the best mix of both in the sense that Cason Wallace is a guy who's been likened to Drew Holiday, a DeAnthony Melton at the lowest, and often like a Marcus Smart defensively. But offensively, he's a mid-range assassin, someone who's got an improving three-point shot and often played the 3 or the 4 growing up, transitioned to the 2, then to the 1. And he's someone that I think is a very solid player. I think he's good at a lot of things. He may not be a master at one. It depends on his defense. The one concern I think that people had is he had some back injuries at Kentucky. And the other concern would be I'm at the combine and I walked by Cason Wallace a number of times. And I'm about 6 foot without shoes, 6'1" with shoes, and he's hardly taller than me.
Ooh.
Like maybe 6'2". But a lot of people say he's like 6'4". So I would say that positional size is why he may have dropped from like what he's positionally like good at. I think he was on par with Anthony Black, and then Anthony Black, you just saw how much bigger he played. But it's a smart pick for the Thunder. If they end up keeping this pick, I think he's more projectable and quicker to their timeline, which is accelerating. They're in a team that's ascending. I think other teams had more time and patience for some of these guys with more potential, like Bufkin.
This is what I would say becomes really important, Nick. Sorry to interrupt you. With Dallas, assuming they get and keep 12, they now have to nail this pick. They have
absolutely.
to. Like, not that they didn't need to nail 10, but they cut themselves off from 2 layers of choices to essentially get off Bertans. They now have to nail number 12.
They had to nail whatever they have to nail whatever they do this summer. Like we've been saying this whole time that they have very few assets. They have very few moves that they can actually do, but they have to nail all of them. Like you have to nail all of your moves this offseason.
If they passed up, for example, Cason Wallace and whoever they pick at 12 doesn't work out and Wallace is awesome, that becomes a real problem.
I was on the camp of Cason Wallace. Like I would pick Cason Wallace. I think him and Jaden Hardy make an incredible backcourt that you can build around. Like Luka and Kyrie and Cason Wallace and Jaden Hardy would be really fun. It's now
Laker fans were hoping he was going to somehow slip to 17.
He got the Kentucky guard bump that I was thinking he was going to get. That a lot of Kentucky guards come out and they're a lot better than we see from them at Kentucky, and they show skills that we didn't see from them at Kentucky and all that. But to your point, yeah, the Mavs have to nail this pick now, especially if they don't trade down again. What if they trade down again with New Orleans or with Atlanta? I mean, they could do that and still get a player. Let's say Atlanta is super in on Cam Whitmore or somebody. Then, hey, that's something they could do. Now we're all just waiting on what's Orlando going to do at 11. Leif, if you're Orlando and you're looking at the 11th pick right now, what are your thoughts on, we already know who it is, and holy cow. Leif, make your prediction, Orlando at 11.
Cam Whitmore.
According to Shams Charania, Orlando is selecting Jet Howard at 11.
Whoa!
Strange.
He's like the third best shooter in this draft, right? If they wanted to just go shooter, Jordan Hawkins and Grady Dick were right there. Why did they not go with them?
I think he's the second best shooter in this draft, and I think it goes Jordan Hawkins, Jet Howard, Grady Dick. But
I'm with you on Jordan Hawkins. I had him as the best player in this draft too, or the best shooter in this draft.
I think what's fascinating to me about this whole thing is that Jet would have fallen because he's got questionable medicals and he's a terrible defender, but at least they got a shooter. I bet you they were praying Hendricks was there.
Well, Hendricks is such a Magic player, right? Like that's just such a player that the Magic would take. But instead, who did they go with at 6? They went with
Anthony Black.
They went Anthony Black at 6, and now they get that Jet Howard. So they get a guy that struggles to shoot and a guy that shoots, and I don't know what else he brings at that point. But man, this means that now the Mavericks back on at 12. Cam Whitmore's still there. Dereck Lively's still there. You've got some options.
According to Yossi Goslin, really good cap guy on Twitter, the Mavericks are generating now a $17 million trade exception from dumping Bertans.
Hey, that's good. Like Andy said, they don't get used very often, but it's another piece that you can use if a team wants to get off of salaries, and the Mavericks are like, hey, we'll pay some of that because, so now they don't have to like match salaries for everything, right? They have this 17, and you can split it up. You can use it in a couple of different ways. You could take a $10 million player. You could do I don't know if you can do a sign and trade, probably still like hard caps them. So I don't know about the sign and trade for Grant Williams or Harrison Barnes or something like that, but maybe you get it for somebody that's under contract at this point. Jet Howard is still that's wrinkling my brain right now. Jet Howard at 11. Where's the highest? Where'd you have him, Leif? You had him.
I had him low. I don't think he can defend.
You had him at 26 in your latest big board.
Yes. Here's my rationale for shooters in general. I have all the shooters low, and I love shooting. It's because they're luxury players. Like you need someone to make them valuable. And Jet Howard, while he can come off screens and really fill it up, like I had him at one point like 11, and I've never had Grady Dick that high just because I thought his type of shooting was more valuable. He flies off screens. He can do it a little bit off the bounce. And I think he can really fill it up. Jordan Hawkins, I think, is the best shooter, but he's smaller. So Howard was the highest of those guys for me at one point. Jet Howard also is rumored to have some ankle issues. So that's something that concerns me. But my logic is Kevin Huerter was about the best prospect or best outcome that I can see for Grady Dick, for instance, because he's better with the ball. He's a similar level shooter. But let me say this. He got played off the court in the playoffs. Like, what's to say these guys won't? Like, you need a player who can facilitate at such an unbelievable level to make them worthwhile that are shooter specific. Even though they're great at one thing, I think it's more valuable to have guys that are good at both ends of the basketball court.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's an interesting spot now. So the Mavericks, 12th pick. We know that Jet Howard is off the board. This is so weird to me. Jet Howard. Where did Raphael have him recently on his latest mock draft? He had him at 20 to the Rockets. This is the first real reach of the draft, right, Leif? Like this is the first real player that nobody else had that is now going a lot higher than we expect. First Michigan player off the board too, right? You still have Bufkin. Who else who's the other Michigan player?
Dickinson, but he transferred to Kansas.
Yeah, but first Michigan player off the board. I did not think Jet Howard would be the first Michigan player off the board, and Jordan and Kobe Bufkin would still be on the board. This is This is an interesting spot to be in. Again, if you're the Dallas Mavericks, you have the 12th pick now. You have Cam Whitmore on the board. You have Dereck Lively on the board, and you have now probably a bunch of teams that are calling you, trying to figure out, can we get this pick? Can we get Cam Whitmore? And now Cam Whitmore did slide and slid out of the top 11. Now that knee may have been a big issue that we were talking about earlier.
Fall to 16.
Is that what you want next? You want the Jazz to just take him? I mean, it's their second pick in the first.
I mean, I'd be stunned if they don't take a guard. But
all right, make your prediction at 12.
Dereck Lively.
According to Shams Charania, the Dallas Mavericks are selecting Dereck Lively at number 12. Mavs have coveted the Duke big man throughout the process. Dereck Lively goes to the Dallas Mavericks. I'm very happy with this pick. I made this pick on the Grit and Grind mock draft that I did after I did my draft prep and stuff. He's exactly what the Dallas Mavericks need. This is a player that will rebound the ball. He can shoot. We've seen his shooting in workouts and different things. His shot looks good, his three-point shot. I think he can eventually step out and take the three. He's a really good rim protector. He's going to come in and I think be a good rim protector. We saw that Walker Kessler was a guy that came in last year and could be a good center and affect the game on the defensive end in his first year. I think that is possible with Dereck Lively. There's going to be a lot of hype and a lot of expectation, like Andy was alluding to earlier. He has to be good. He has to come in. There is pressure on him that he has to be a player that can probably start for them, because unless they do something else, they trade the traded player exception for and acquire a Clint Capella or a Kelly Olynyk or like some kind of a Jonas Valanciunas, some kind of stopgap center. They have to have Dereck Lively come in and be at least a contributor, right? Because they have to add to this. There's no more. I've said this several times this offseason. I will continue to say it. If Dwight Powell is the starting center for the Dallas Mavericks on day one of the season, this will be a failure from this front office. They have to absolutely make this move. They have to make some kind of move to bring in a center. They bring in Dereck Lively now, and here now the Mavericks make this pick. And this is a way for them to acquire some kind of top 5 center. Are they trading him? Did they trade it already?
No. I just saw a comment from Bobby on the chat board. Willie Cauley-Stein is a free agent, so it's weird to use the 12th pick on him.
The Ringer, one of their comps was Willie Cauley-Stein.
I've seen many comps to Willie Cauley-Stein.
I don't really see it because I think he's bigger than Willie Cauley-Stein right now.
Look,
I know that his shot looks better than Willie's.
If Lively is as good of a player as Willie Cauley-Stein thinks he is, that kid's a Hall of Fame lock. Because Willie Cauley-Stein was a big fan of Willie Cauley-Stein. Just ask him.
My favorite part about Willie Cauley-Stein on the Mavericks was in the bubble. He had this whole setup, like, and he did a video of his whole setup where he had like a music recording station and a video game streaming station, and like he had all these things just set up, and he was ready to go for everything else but basketball. Leaf, what are the Mavericks getting in Dereck Lively?
A rim protecting, rim running, pick and roll big man, and I think this was the pick. We've had some texts between you and the Locked On NBA Big Board crew with myself, Richard Stam, and Rafael Barlow. And Rafael and I responded to your text, hey, is Lively the guy? Like unequivocally, yes. Yeah. Like you have to go get the rim running big man to complement Luka Doncic, who can protect the defense as your point of attack defenders are not special with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving on the floor. Like you need to make that compensation. And I think offensively, he'll be a plus eventually. It's not immediate, but I think eventually he'll be a plus.
Well, at least his rim running is going to be a plus. Like working with Luka, it's not that hard to be a rim runner. You have to be good at screening, which, some bigs come in and they're not good at, right? Like Christian Wood struggled at that. We've seen Willie Cauley-Stein and others come in and struggle to set great screens for Luka. But if you can, and you can set screens like Dwight Powell can, or like, JaVale McGee did for like 6 times last year. Like if you can, your job is pretty easy. They're not going to ask him to do a lot. They're going to ask him to set screens, to rim run, to catch lobs that Luka and Kyrie are going to throw excellently. He's going to be out in the corner and maybe take a couple of threes here and there. Man, I'm excited about this. I'm excited to cover a rookie. I'm excited to cover a rookie that may go to Summer League now, because I already know that Jaden Hardy is going to Summer League. So now we got like this little young core with Jaden Hardy, Josh Green, Dereck Lively, maybe a young player named Luka. Like that's a good little young core. It's just can they win right now, and can they play right now is going to be the big question that we're going to ask from now until training camp and then through the season even.
Can Lively play with Kyrie?
I think so. I mean, He's as good a fit as there
the other
is.
big question right now for you guys.
He played with Nick Claxton really well in Brooklyn. Like, I think that's a connection that, can work. But yeah, can he play with Kyrie? Can he play with Luka? I think they can play together. He's gonna be setting a ton of double drag screens. That's for sure. That's what the Mavericks just run over and over and over again with Luka. But he's a player that fits so well with Luka. He's a player that fits with what the Mavericks want to do. I'm curious about his switching ability. He can like step out and move a little bit, Leaf. But what do you think about his switching and rotating? The Mavericks run this defense with Sean Sweeney that you just have to move and rotate a bunch. Is that something that you think Dereck Lively can do early on?
He's very nimble. I'm not saying he'll be amazing right away at a switching defense at the NBA level, but I think he's got every capacity to be good at defensively in that. And like, I think when Duke played their best basketball, and I'm keenly aware of this because one of my best friends is a Duke fan and he texts me all their adjustments. And I mean all of them. He would tell me, he's like, now Lively's playing the drop, but now he'll hedge, and now they're icing ball screens. And every time he would say Lively's the best defender on the court. Like, Lively's the one that's making the difference. And so for a freshman who is reacclimating himself from injury and playing with a talented team to make that big of a difference and command a defense that ended up being top 10 in the country Ken Palm wise by the end of the season with freshmen littered all over the place, I have every belief that he can be a good switch defender. I just won't say it's immediate.
Yeah, and it takes every young center time. Like, you look at even some of these young guys, like Nick Claxton was a later pick. What is he, like close to the 30th pick?
29, maybe?
Yeah, he's close. Yeah, he was a very late first round pick. Took him like 4 years to finally become the Nick Claxton that we want on the Mavericks, today, or to be traded today. So it may take a little time, but Walker Kessler, like I mentioned earlier, is a center that came out last year that was a really good rim protector, blocked a ton of shots in college, and was good from day one. You watched a ton of Walker Kessler, being the pseudo sub-host for Locked On Jazz. Leaf, do you see any similarities between these two players and how they could impact day one?
I think their impact could be similar. I think Kessler's the more skilled offensive player.
Sure.
I think Kessler is more functional in a half-court setting than Lively is at this point offensively. Defensively, Kessler's phenomenal. He's got just impeccable timing that I don't know if Lively's quite got at the same capacity, but Lively might be the better athlete, like in terms of verticality. I think Kessler's a better runner. Lively might be a better vertical jumper. And I think they're both tremendously coordinated for their size.
The thing about Kessler that stood out, and one of the reasons why I'll throw shade at Richard Stamen again, that he was so low on him, is because of his speed, but his feel defensively is just
in fairness, he lost weight and he gained muscle, so he became a far quicker runner. I think that was a fair assessment. It was just we didn't know the capacity at which he could run if he played at a different weight and a different role.
And we're seeing sort of the opposite with Lively, and that at some point he was measured at like 215, weight. And then Rafael Barlow reported that he's at 235. And so I think that is, he's adding muscle because he does get pushed around a little bit on post-ups and things like that. You talked about that with Wembanyama earlier. Every big gets pushed around at some point. Man, this is interesting. Dereck Lively going to the Dallas Mavericks. If you're listening to us, yes, this is Locked On NBA Draft. This is going to be live on Locked On Mavericks, Locked On Big Board, Locked On NBA, Locked On Lakers. Andy Kamenetsky was with us for a while. He is ducked out. He may come back at some point to talk about the Lakers pick when they make a pick. And all of our shows, we have a show for every single NBA team, and you can click the link in the description to find the show that covers your team. Dereck Lively, now the pick, walking up, wearing red. Looking good wearing the dark red velvety suit there. But yeah, if you're listening right now, then this is the Locked On NBA Draft stream, and we will have a bunch of hosts come in and out and see what happens with them. Man, Dereck Lively going to the Dallas Mavericks. I'm feeling good. Now you're looking at the 13th pick. And with the 13th pick, you have the Toronto Raptors. Who are you looking at for the Raptors with the 13th pick now?
It's interesting because I think they go guard. And it really depends what they preference. So they want the most natural scorer. Maybe you go Keontae George. Do you want the guy who I think might have the most upside if he hits at the highest peak in Kobe Bufkin? Maybe. Jalen Hood-Schifino is someone I've heard rumors that the Raptors like. So I don't truly have a prediction of where they're going to go. I think it'll be between one of those three guys, and whichever they prefer. And maybe they didn't think Bufkin would be there, and that's why the rumor was Hood Schifino. If I had to guess, I'd guess Bufkin.
Kobe Bufkin is the prediction. I don't have the pick yet. I'm not going to make you. I'll make you predict when I know what the pick is, but we don't know what it is yet. There, Dereck Lively is still on the board.
I hope it's not a guard, so the Jazz get their pick at guard.
Yeah, because there is now all of a sudden a bunch of guards. You have Cam Whitmore,
which is expected. Like, sorry to cut you off there, but like this is the point in the draft where the guards were going to go. Like Case and Wallace went higher than most people anticipated, and there's still going to be 5 guards in the next 6 picks, and 5 in the next 7. Obviously, with Whitmore there, I'm not certain what's going to happen. But
and we had Coulibaly going a lot earlier than a lot of people thought too. So that he pushes a bunch of those guards down. So now there's a bunch of guards, and the Raptors need guards, right? That they may lose their only guard in Fred VanVleet. So this is a spot where they could look for, a guard. I'm very interested to see what they do here at this point, but we're still waiting. I mean, we haven't heard. Last we heard, the Mavs are taking Lively like 10 minutes ago. So the Raptors, I guess, are officially on the clock now. So it sounds like if it hasn't been released now, they may be looking at a trade or doing something. They're at least on the phones doing something because they're 2-ish minutes in. Also, can we talk about this? It's so dumb that Lively's wearing an OKC Thunder hat right now. I mean, can we just give him the different hat? Like, we know that some things fall apart, but he's wearing a Thunder hat. It's weird. Luka wore a Atlanta Hawks hat. Like, he had DeAndre Hunter wearing a Lakers hat back in the day. Like, can we just move on from this?
They should all either be able to wear the hat that we know they're going to, and we just end this charade about when it has to be officially announced, or you go like the Rob Lowe NFL hat route, where they all just wear a hat that says NBA, and you just know they're
the Rob Lowe NFL.
They're just going to the league. We're just going to say these are all NBA players, and we're not going to make it any more specific. But like Kobe is forever seen at the draft in a Charlotte hat.
I know.
That's ridiculous.
Just let them wear the NBA hat, like the Rob Lowe generic hat at that point. But the problem is, Andy, they want to sell these draft hats, right? And they want people to and fans to look at these and say, all right, well, I want this Thunder one because I see, a draft prospect wearing it. Even though they change them all the time, and I've never liked any of these draft hats. They're not for me in my head shape, I don't think.
It's just, come on. Like, enough.
Oh, now it's been 11 minutes since Dereck Lively has been picked, or since Dereck Lively was reported. So the Raptors are really taking their time on this, trying to figure out what to do. If you're listening right now, by the way, we will have a Locked On Mavericks episode late after this. I will be joining Isaac Harris. We'll talk about all this. Isaac is into the move, and I'm into the move too, because it also opens up a lot of opportunity for the Mavericks to get off of a bad contract. They have the ability to use the mid-level exception now, which is huge for them to try and sign somebody like Grant Williams, Dylan Brooks, somebody that they need. They still also have the 2027 first-round pick. They could use that and Tim Hardaway to get another wing or a center or something like that. But it does seem like they've made the pick for their center with Dereck Lively. I'm excited for it. And this is fun. I'm glad they at least made some kind of move and traded down and did something.
And they just need to have gotten it right, man. That's what it is. Got to get it right.
And now the thing is, will Jason Kidd play Dereck Lively? That becomes the question now, is that will Jason Kidd trust him? Because it took a while for him to trust Jaden Hardy until the end. And then they were losing games. And they just needed anything. They just needed any spark at all to get
Nick,
them
do you
going.
think Dereck Lively has a little bit of Reggie Bullock in him? Like in trying to figure out whether or not Kidd's going to play him? Remember that was your big back and forth?
Do I still have it on here? I don't know if I still have it on here.
I'm not playing. I'm watching, just like you guys.
Oh yeah, this will be me and Kidd with Dereck Lively.
I have to apologize that you felt that he should have played more.
Yeah, probably.
He's your new Reggie Bullock.
Probably at a certain point. We'll see that, but they take their time with these guys. They didn't play Josh Green, and then all of a sudden they put him in a bigger role, and he performed really well. So they like to take their time on development. So this could be a very frustrating process if they don't think Lively is ready right away.
Yeah, the chat board is already in a mutiny against Kidd for not playing Lively, and he hasn't even gone to the facility in Dallas yet.
He's not even wearing a Mavericks hat yet. He's still wearing the Thunder hat somewhere out there.
And I'm telling you right now, the Mavs the Mavs fans on the chat board are already angry at Kidd. This is glorious. I love it.
Okay, the Raptors pick is in. Adam Silver's going to the board. We still don't know what it is. It's been 15 minutes. And you ready for it, Leaf?
I got a spoiler. It popped up on my computer, but
the Toronto Raptors,
I'm shocked.
The Toronto Raptors are selecting Grady Dick with the 13th pick. The Dick pick made by the Toronto Raptors and Masai Ujiri. What's your thoughts on this? What are they getting, Leaf?
Well, they needed shooting, so I'm not flabbergasted as I've been a couple times today. But I would have anticipated they go guard just due to the lack of a guard on the roster. But maybe Scotty Barnes is the point guard of the future effectively. And they just want to put some spacing around he and Pascal Siakam. Like I said, I think Grady Dick is a luxury pick, someone that if you've got the creators could function well, but not someone I see with an actual upside that would warrant the top 10 consideration he was getting. I've been low on him. I have number 21 on my board, but I can at least make sense of this pick. Like I would have been, I thought he was the most likely candidate at 11 for the Magic for the same reason that they took Jet, but not when Cam Whitmore and Bufkin were available.
Cam Whitmore is still sliding at this point, right? 13, and he still has not been taken.
This is sort of my reaction with this pick for Toronto. Nobody can quite figure out what direction they're heading in right now.
No, yeah.
And Dick feels, though, like a player that no matter what direction you choose, he'll work. Like he can fit with whatever you're doing because you're always going to need shooting no matter what. So like whoever they decide to commit to in Toronto, whoever they decide to trade, whatever, you're going to need shooting. So that'll work.
I have been compared to Grady Dick several times. People say that I look like him, that we're brothers, that they want me to wear the red sparkly suit that he's wearing right now.
You need to find out that you're related to this guy, like quickly now.
Oh yeah, when they talk about all the friends and family coming out of the woodwork, I could be one of the friends and family.
Exactly.
I also got told at a game one time, like, are you one of the Corvers? Like Kyle Korver's your brother, right? Like, that's what I get. I get the white shooters. That's my comps.
Cousin Nick needs to come out of the woodwork.
Toronto taking Grady Dick. I'm actually more surprised that their pick didn't get released or their pick didn't get tipped than them actually taking Grady Dick. But this is an interesting pick. Leaf was talking about earlier that these shooters are kind of a luxury pick, that if you have all of your stuff set, and we don't know what the Raptors are doing. So yeah, to your point, maybe they...
Yeah, I think it's one or the other. It's either a luxury pick or it's kind of just a plug and play pick. Like it's one or the other. Like it could be a luxury, but it could also be we have no idea what this is going to look like in a year, but we know we will need this dude's skill set.
I got 10 tweets at Nick Van Exit. I got tweets. Congrats on being drafted by the Raptors. It's just fantastic. All my mentions are just congrats.
Oh, that is phenomenal, man.
They've been saying his name is Grady Nick.
Again, man, you need to do like a 23andMe and find out a way to be related to this guy. It'll be very good for the Angstadt family moving forward.
Oh my goodness. All right. That being said, now that the Grady Dick pick has been made, this episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. If you go and check out some of the names of some of their clothing, it will be also related to the Grady Dick name.
Probably made a lot of the same jokes.
Bird Dog's stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and giving you a truly sculpted look. If you want your dick pics to look truly sculpted like Grady's do, go check out Bird Dogs. They fit way better than the regular shorts and are made of a stiff, restricting cotton. You can go get them. They have a lining in them to where you don't necessarily have to wear underwear with them, but you can as well. They're comfortable either way. I've tried. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA to get a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise. Jake Madison took his Bird Dogs and left. He left the stream, and he's still hanging out there. So show yourself wearing Bird Dogs sometime soon. Again, birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA. Leaf is back.
Whew.
Leaf is back. Are you feeling better? You're now you've overcome Taylor Hendricks going 9 to the Jazz. You've now recovered from that.
Like I said, I don't hate the pick. I was shocked. The anxiety was because I love Cam Whitmore. I understand the knee injury, but in terms of talent, he's a top 5 pick. The frustration was that why on the earth did the Wizards give me hope? Like, why? Why would you trade up to 7? Take a guy that was someone that the Jazz probably would have considered at 9 had you just picked 7, taking Jarace Walker at 8. Who knows what the Wizards do? And now you gave me this horrible hope that Jarace Walker, the guy I really wanted to take, was available, thinking, oh man, now the Pacers are going to be sliding down the draft. And now they go 8 and just rip my heart out.
Shout out to Sean Woodley, host of Locked On Raptors, who said, I simply refuse to ever be mature about this guy's name. So I'm glad he went to Sean, if anybody. He's going to make good use of that. But Leaf, make your prediction for the 14th pick, because we know it from Jake Fisher and Shams Charania.
I'll go with Keontae George.
With the 14th pick, according to Shams Charania, the New Orleans Pelicans are selecting Jordan Hawkins with the 14th pick. The best shooter in the draft goes off the board, Leaf.
It makes sense. It's like I said, luxury pick. And this is a team that can afford that luxury because they have on-ball creators that get downhill and score in areas that are conducive for shooters. Like my guy, Richard Stamen, very first episode I ever did with Richard Stamen, I talked about how I love Trey Murphy. And Trey Murphy is perfect on this role for the Pelicans. What do the Pelicans need? More space for Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram to thrive. Yep. More for CJ McCollum. So I actually like this fit. Much like I thought Grady Dick and Jet Howard's fits were good. I just am lower in general about those type of players that are one-dimensional. I am a little bit surprised Hawkins was the pick for the Pelicans, just because I think they could have a guy to be a protege behind CJ McCollum. And there was guys that fit that dynamic, like Nick Smith or Keontae George, that are kind of like mid-range oriented scoring guards, or you could get a point guard in Bufkin. I will say this. I love the board for the Jazz right now, though, so I'm happy.
There's some players open for him.
This is an interesting tweet I just saw from Jonathan Wasserman. Cam Whitmore's medical is creating all sorts of worrying. This has come back to haunt teams more often than not. Like, I immediately thought of Michael Porter Jr.
Yeah.
Like when he slid and there were all those concerns. And look, Porter has had injury issues while he's been in the NBA, to be fair.
He plays with the most, like, a unique back brace that no one has ever played with in the NBA before.
But, when he's right, he's a really good player. And he's somebody that I think a lot of teams would like to have, or if nothing else, there are a lot of teams from that draft that if they could have it over, they would put up with some of those absences for what you get when he's actually on the court.
Yeah, this is so wild to me that Cam Whitmore is still sliding. He slid in our draft, right? Like I think, didn't he go 9th or something like that? He ended up going later, a little later than we thought. And I was like, oh well, that's kind of weird. Maybe we didn't do enough homework on Cam Whitmore, but he's still sliding. He's out of the top 14 now, and now to 15 we have the Atlanta Hawks, and we'll see what the Hawks do now with the 15th pick. But Cam Whitmore kind of fits there. They need some kind of wing like that can score and do some things. Leaf, do you see Cam Whitmore being the Hawks taking a risk like that with the new coach of your old coach with hanging out there?
I think they would be wise to take him. Landry Fields is the GM over there. So I don't know his brand and the way he thinks very well, but I'd imagine they have the luxury of having a franchise player. They could pick someone that fits with Trae Young immediately, like maybe a point of attack defender.
Who is that? Who is the franchise player?
Well, the player that heads their franchise. I'm Team Luka, Nick. I have been always.
It's not a debate anymore. It's been done.
It never was.
Cam Reddish made it done.
Yeah, it never ever was. But my point being is I think that they have the ability to take a swing and not like rush him right along, because they don't need this amazing rookie production. At 15, if you get Cam Whitmore, it's a miracle. If he's there at 16, the Jazz don't take him, despite that I guaranteed Jazz fans on Twitter that if the Jazz take a wing at 9, they're going to take a guard at 16, and they don't take Whitmore, I'll still be mad. But I actually love the board for the Jazz. So my heart pressure is a lot better than it was entering pick 8.
Is Cam Whitmore a Quinn Snyder player? Is that something you could say? Or is he could fit with any coach?
He was categorized as excellent as a spot up and shoot guy. He was categorized as very, very good at isolation. I don't know his pick and roll metrics off the top of my head, but he's athletic and he can shoot. I think Quinn would like him. He may not be the passer that Quinn typically likes.
The pick has been announced by Shams Charania. Do you want to make the prediction, Leaf?
I'll go Cam Whitmore.
The Atlanta Hawks are selecting Kobe Bufkin with the 15th pick. Kobe Bufkin, who we thought maybe had some kind of top 10 promise, now goes 15 off the board. The other Michigan guard. What is Atlanta getting with Kobe Bufkin now that Cam Whitmore slides out of the top 15?
Please, Jazz, take him. Kobe Bufkin. Kobe Bufkin is a very talented guard who figured out the point guard position on the fly almost. Like he'd played the 2 guard as a freshman, and then he was the point guard. And then midway through the season, they're like, man, we're not getting enough production yet. Howard's starting to slow down. Hunter Dickinson, teams have built scouting reports to stop. It's my job. And then he figured out, he went on a stretch where he was like scoring like 18, 5, and 5 at one point in the year of efficient basketball. He's very good at a lot of things. I wouldn't say he's a master of any one trait, but he's a better athlete than most of these guards that you would say like, oh, like he scores in kind of an unconventional fashion. Well, he's an excellent rim finisher, shot 71% at the rim as a guard. Like that's crazy. And then he shot well from the mid-range. He shot 85% from the free throw line. His threes looked good. I'd almost say he's an unconventional player because he's a good athlete, but he plays like he's not. And so I like this pick. If Cam Whitmore weren't on the board, like I can't reiterate this enough. Like this is an unbelievable talent. As long as his knee is not like debilitating his career, like someone's got to take him.
Do you think that's what it is?
Yeah.
It's got to be.
I mean, is there anything that's been concerns about him from like a character perspective, work ethic, translating skill to the NBA, like anything?
It's got to be the knee. Like I could see teams being lower on him because maybe his game's like empty calorie scoring. Like I compared him to like Miles Bridges, and maybe his highest high would be like Jaylen Brown, and Miles Bridges is fairly empty calorie scoring. He's a tremendous athlete, someone who goes downhill, dunks the ball, can shoot well, but like, you know, maybe defensively, if he puts his mind to it, it's very, very good. He did that at times for Nova, and other times he was lazy. But still, like you got to believe that if there's not an injury, that someone would have taken him.
John, this is completely random. John Hollinger says if done as a 3-way trade, the Mavericks could take in up to $21 million, which is not nothing that the Mavericks could take in some kind of trade here. All right. Jake Fisher is reporting who the Jazz are targeting. I don't know if this is an official, like this is who they're taking. Do you want to?
They're going to be targeting Jalen Hood-Schifino, but please, oh please, take Cam Whitmore. I beg, like Nick, please.
Jake Fisher is reporting that Utah is targeting Keontae George with the 16th pick. Sources
that's not a surprise. I realized right as I said that they like George over Hood-Schifino, but I got so infatuated with Cam. I don't even dislike it. I just want Whitmore so badly.
You got another pick still. I mean, at this rate, he may still be there. What's the last pick the Jazz have? 28?
28. If he's there at 28, oh my God, Nick. And if we don't take him. I'd say the same thing about J.G. Jackson too. As for Keontae George, I don't know if this is confirmed as the pick, but
yeah,
Keontae George, the Jazz would like because he offers scoring and he's run his drills and workouts even at the combine with like an attention to being a point guard. He's someone that I compared prior to the season to Jamal Murray. I watched him play the U23 global games, which was like the Baylor roster representing USA, play Canada and Italy. And he scored 32 and 37 points without the second, third, and fourth best players on Baylor playing. So he did it single-handedly as an 18-year-old, and he was unbelievable. And I was like, man, if this guy goes to the NBA draft next year, he's going to end up being a 7th pick and someone, if he has a little bit of help as a creator, like Murray obviously has Jokic. You don't necessarily have Jokic around to do this stuff, but you can have someone help him as a creator. And he'll be a guy who can score 20 points a game and get you 4 assists, like if he hits his peak.
We got a tweet from
I like
Woj.
this pick.
We got a tweet from Woj that Utah had some conversations on trading 9 and 16, but appear to be standing pat. Keontae George has been high on board for number 16, Andy. So we did get some tweeting about they're high on him. He tipped 1 pick now. Woj has.
So who are we going to trade 9 and 16 for?
They've had some, but no, it sounds like he said they're standing pat with 9 and 16. So.
I'm just curious, what would it be moving up to like 5, like getting Anthony Black, who was everyone's favorite one?
Do you think that, I think sometimes with these guys dropping, like all of a sudden everybody goes, well, what am I not seeing in this guy? Like, is Cam Whitmore still dropping? Like, oh, maybe they had thoughts on. Shem says sources Utah is selecting Keontae George, so that's where we are with the Utah Jazz at 16. But yeah, I think some teams just get nervous. Like Cam Whitmore sliding for everybody else. Like why should we take him then? Like then they shy away from him. Let's go down the board. Who's the next team that should take him? Leaf's gonna say every team, but you got the Jazz at 16. Just took. Well, now we have the Lakers at 17.
Yeah,
Andy,
I was gonna say I'm locked in. I'm in the zone.
What do they do? What do they do here?
I'm going to be honest. I don't really even know anything about Cam Whitmore because I had no expectation that he could possibly even be an option for the Lakers. Like, for real. I've done no research on him whatsoever because every single mock had him going way before the Lakers possibly would have been an option. So I don't know. I genuinely don't know. Like, I've seen Nick Smith come up a few times as a potential option for the Lakers. Nick Smith Jr. from Arkansas.
Yeah, Leaf, if it's not Cam Whitmore, then who do you want the Lakers to take at 17 now? Who's still on the board? Muted. Leaf, your mic is muted.
I would have said Jordan Hawkins had he been on the board just for the shooting fit.
Yeah.
Nick Smith makes sense to me. Jalen Hood-Schifino makes a little bit of sense, but not as much just because the Lakers have ball-dominant guys. Maybe he can learn. I'd go with Nick Smith as my prediction of who they take, but I would take Whitmore.
You would take Whitmore, but you think they're going to take Nick Smith?
Yes.
Okay, we'll see. I mean, it'd be a hell of a swing for the Lakers to take the guy that everybody seems afraid of for one reason and one reason only. Like, now, which guy do you think is more ready to play now for the Lakers?
Whitmore. I mean, he's an unbelievable athlete.
Can we talk about this headline for Raptors pick 80-inch dick in NBA draft, according to SB Nation.
Oh, this is going to be our future for as long as this kid has a career.
Oh, it's so funny. And Sean Woodley's going to have so much fun with it. And I'm so glad. That is so funny.
He's going to have a talk with David about what's allowable and what isn't.
Yeah, you can't just change it to like Grady Flaccid. You can't just change it, change the vernacular up. It's got to just be what it is.
But
my gosh. So Lakers up now. Cam Whitmore on the board.
Could be a
couple
Grady.
Other.
Yeah.
Is this a Jalen Hood-Schifino spot, Leaf?
I was thinking about that. The only thing I'm concerned about would be that he's a very on ball, like needs the ball in his hands, pick and roll oriented guy. And it just doesn't seem like a conducive situation for that, at least in the time being.
Shot worse on catch and shoot threes than he did on pull up like threes off of the pick and roll, which is just a weird combination for him.
His pick and roll and beyond above the break shooting was actually unbelievable. He shot 11% from the corner though.
Both corners or just one corner?
I can't remember, but
11%.
11%. He's 44%. Here, I'll find you the stats on my scouting report right here. 44% at the top of the key, 38% on pick and roll from three, 39% from above the break from, just above the break.
Yeah.
He's not a great rim finisher. He's kind of a pick and roll mid-range assassin. I don't anticipate him being the pick here, but I think he'd be a talented pick. Like, it makes sense.
It's an interesting spot now. The Lakers got some options here. Cam Whitmore still sliding. We thought that he could potentially be a top 5. A lot of people were talking about him at 4 for the Rockets at one point. And now he's fallen out of the lottery. Now he's there for the Lakers at 17.
Like, does he have no knee whatsoever? That he's fallen this far? Like, he's like Cotton Hill and King of the Hill missing shins or whatever. Like, what's going on?
Welcome in, Joe Mullinax, talking about having some great knees. Joe Mullinax, welcome in. Locked On Grizzlies.
I played pickup for about an hour today, and I can tell you that your sources were wrong on that. They are not great knees. They are not.
You played for an hour. That's pretty good.
It was 3-on-3 old man basketball. The peak old man basketball is 4-on-4. We were down a couple of guys today, so I'm a little bit worn down. But I'm here. I'm here for you guys. I'm here for our audience. I'm a tried and true locked on soldier at this point.
Oh, Joe, we appreciate you jumping in. Nope, no first round pick for the Grizzlies this time, which is
Thank God.
a weird feeling for you. You don't want anybody in this draft.
I not necessarily want anybody. I wanted a veteran. I wanted an adult. And shout out to Zach Kleiman. They went out and got an adult. May not be the perfect fit. May not be OG Anunoby or Mikal Bridges, but Marcus Smart is can I say the A word on this stream? Is that
sure?
He's a grown ass man. Right. And
yeah,
all of you, obviously, Andy knows the Grizzlies well, at least of recently. The Grizzlies need a grown ass man, and Marcus Smart is very much that.
So after Grady Dick's selection, Joe, you can say a lot more than that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
it's already been, the boundaries have been tested far worse than that.
I'm guessing I already missed the hard Dick analysis that was the Toronto Raptors.
Well, you missed the SB Nation headline where they said that Raptors select 80-inch dick in the NBA draft.
I did miss that. I can't wait to see that. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. No, I mean Dick has length, that's for sure. He has the ability to stroke it from deep, and that's what matters most is that skill set.
Just a bunch of grown men.
We're going to be getting an NBA email from David Locke.
Yeah, David Locke's not going to be happy. It's going to be in all caps, and he's just going to be so upset.
Oh, David would be one of the first ones to make one of these jokes. I think they'll do some kind of crossover with Locked On Raptors, and he'll.
There you go. Well, that's a long distance to travel, but you do that for Dick in Toronto. That makes sense. I think that with Marcus Smart, you have a guy who really helps the Grizzlies mature, right? I was just saying a moment ago to somebody that if Ja Morant can't latch onto that guy and just learn how to be a professional, obviously Ja Morant's a better basketball player. But Marcus Smart, the charity work that he does, all the fact that the Boston Celtics swindled, I would argue both teams, but certainly the Washington Wizards in that trade and found a way to get both first round picks plus Porzingis is fascinating to me. And yet, if you check Twitter, Boston Celtics fans, it's like an 80-20 split where 80% of them are mourning Marcus Smart. And that tells you, or at least it tells me, all I need to know about what that guy meant to that franchise, what that guy meant to that city. You know, Memphis obviously has St. Jude. Marcus Smart did a ton of great work with children's hospitals and hospitals there in Boston. I think he's going to be able, and again, Desmond Bane already does this a lot. Jaren Jackson Jr., even Ja does some work like that to an extent. But I think that Marcus Smart is going to help these guys grow up. And, you know, like I said, Andy, obviously the Grizzlies and the Lakers played in the first round. The Grizzlies looked like boys a lot in that series, playing against grown men. And
you felt like, you know, Steven Adams was supposed to be that guy for them, but you can't really do anything when you're on the bench and street close.
Absolutely.
Like there's only so much leadership you can provide from that place. Like Marcus Smart, he's going to be, I think, respected in that locker room. He's certainly not going to be shy about telling guys when they're doing the wrong things.
Mm-hmm. He's going to stand up and he's going to get in people's faces, and he's going to be, even if Steven Adams was that leader to an extent, because there are reports that he had, you know, the team meeting where he talks about not going out on the road and that sort of stuff. Marcus Smart, you know, might call a team meeting and then just get in Ja Morant's face and say, stop doing the crap that you're doing. Right. And I think that that's going to be really fascinating to see. And Morant has, you know, even if he did have superstar leeway, I think it's fair to say that that's gone. Right. So I don't think he needs to come back and be humble. And I wrote about this over at Bluff City Media. You know, Morant has to rediscover that audacity, like the thing that made so many people fall in love with his game in the first place. You saw it in the playoffs, Andy. He was a shell of himself, and it wasn't because of his hand injury. Like he didn't look like he was enjoying himself. He didn't look like he was thoroughly there or completely there. Marcus Smart obviously doesn't have the off the court issues, and he is very much an audacious basketball player. So he can maybe help Ja redirect and rediscover his, you know, his competitive nature. I think that there's a real lane here where Smart, even though he's not the perfect fit, like I said, there's plenty of other wing bodies that would maybe make more sense. But Smart is still an elite defender. Smart is a better player than Dylan Brooks. And
he and Ja can play well off each other once Ja's back from the suspension.
Which he and Tyus Jones could not do. Right? Like people calling Tyus Jones the best backup point guard in the NBA. That's not true. He's the best substitute starting point guard. in the NBA. He's the best substitute teacher because he comes in and he plays at a very good level as a starting point guard. You look at his numbers as a reserve, and Tyus struggled. So I'm glad Tyus is in Washington. I think he's going to have a good season for them, and he's going to make a lot of sense for that Wizards team. Now you've got a guy in Marcus Smart who can play next to Ja. And, just thinking about Marcus Smart and Jaren Jackson Jr. and Steven Adams, you mentioned him a moment ago. He's an underrated defender just in terms of being really good at being a big dude in the lane. The Grizzlies will have a top 5 defense in the NBA pretty easily, and they might have the best defense once things get rolling.
Mike Finger just reported there's so many hilarious things I'm laughing at. I'm looking forward to our Counted Up on Locked On NBA next week. Victor Wembanyama has asked about what excites him the most in San Antonio and what he wants to work on this summer, and he said breakfast tacos.
Yeah, breakfast tacos are an important piece there in the San Antonio culture.
Here in the southern states, Joe.
It's a southern thing. That's fair.
We enjoy a breakfast taco. Dallas, I'm enjoying some breakfast tacos here. I'm excited to go see Wembanyama. And then Josh Lloyd also just tweeted, Nick looks like Grady Dick. I'm getting that. People are saying I'm getting that a lot today. Also, the Lakers pick has been on the board for like 12 minutes now. The last tweet we got about Keontae George from Jake Fisher was 13 minutes ago. We're like extending this out.
Maybe they're trying to find a way to get Dick from Toronto.
This has been a minute.
Tell Andy, do you know where the Rob Pelinka at Disneyland picture comes from? Because I see a bunch of people tweeting it like that Rob Lowe's at Disneyland today, which he's not, obviously, because I've seen that picture a bunch. But
I have no idea. That's news to me. I have no idea.
According to Jake Fisher, the Rockets have called Lakers, Heat, and Warriors at picks number 17, 18, and 19, but won't tell rival front offices who Houston is targeting for a potential trade up. Here we go. You want to make the prediction, Leaf? Leaf, who are the Lakers taking with the 17th pick? You're muted.
Nick Smith Jr.
The Los Angeles Lakers at number 17 are selecting Jalen Hood-Schifino with the 17th pick. Cam Whitmore slides again, almost now out of the top 20. Jalen Hood-Schifino. He
must have had a terrible physical. There's something there.
He must be like DeJuan Blair. Like he didn't have ACLs, but maybe he doesn't have a knee ligament. Leaf, what does Jalen Hood-Schifino bring to the Lakers now?
He's a mid-range assassin, pick and roll point guard with size. He's 6'6", 217 pounds, and he knows how to play the point guard position. Can be turnover prone. You look at his numbers and you think, well, he's a little inefficient. But if you watched Indiana play, it's hard to be efficient. They had 2 bigs like play on each dunker spot, and they'd feed the ball into Trace Jackson Davis, and then he'd use a pick and roll and he'd score. So he was asked to do a lot of like catch the grenade and try to score late in clocks. So we talked about his 3-point shooting before a moment ago, above the break, behind the picks. He's really, really good from those. I think he'll be a little bit slowly brought along, but he'll be tutored by a good tutor. Like LeBron James is going to be teaching him how to run pick and roll. And I think down the road that could be a good fit.
How much do you think he can play off the ball? Like, does he have utility there? Just because, you've talked about before the amount of guys on this team that need the ball. LeBron, Anthony Davis got to get him it, but you want the ball in his hands a lot. Austin Reeves has the ball in his hands a lot. If D'Angelo Russell's brought back, Dennis Schroeder, these are all guys that to some varying degree need the ball in their hand a reasonable amount of time.
I'd imagine he doesn't play off ball much. I think he's probably a more development project to be on the ball. But he's big enough to play multiple positions. So maybe defensively he has some viability as someone who can play the 2 in spells just because of his size. Wingspan. Yeah, he's a big guy. Like he's sturdy and got long arms. I still think he's an on-ball guy, so he's brought along more slowly. That's why I imagine it could be Nick Smith just for like a spark plug scorer in the more immediate time frame. But that said, the Lakers are a contender. If they want to get one of those type of guys, or they want to be a contender, I should say. And if they want to get one of those guys to help them lead into true contention, they can get it because they're a big market. So I guess it makes sense to take someone they think is probably a more safe projection long-term.
Do you like it? Do you like this pick?
Andy, can we talk about?
I'm all right with it. I had him 14 or 15 on my board. So yeah, I'm happy with it.
Andy, can we talk about this picture that the Lakers tweeted out on the clock and the draft room is completely empty with no one in there? There's no one in any of the chairs.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Ugh.
And it's
think they just went
LeBron
auto-
on the other end. It's
they
LeBron
went-
next to the phone, cut out of the picture. It's just
They
him
went
in the
auto
room.
draft.
It's just him.
What is, guys? What is that?
They
What is
literally
that?
tweeted. They literally tweeted this at 8:52 Central, which is like 7 minutes ago.
Maybe Chat GPT sent him the pick. It might be an artificial intelligence kind of situation.
Yeah, they
Cost
used it for
cutting.
the secret invasion intro, and now they used it for the Lakers draft pick. Jalen Hood-Schifino now walking off. He's wearing the green suit. Do you take offense to Jalen Hood-Schifino wearing a green suit to the draft and going to the Lakers now, Andy?
I mean, this may let you know he really was not expecting to be taken by the Lakers or be in this position, whatever. Because if you really have a strong sense of being taken by the Lakers, you don't wear a green suit. That said, it's got wild hair. I love me some wild hair, so that's good. That's points in my book.
I will say, how old is he? How old is Jalen Hood-Schifino?
He's
19
a
years old?
freshman. Yeah, he's a 19-year-old freshman.
So
Yeah,
you
he
got to
ju-
remember,
he-
that means he was born in like 2004.
Yeah, 2003.
So-
He just turned 20 in June 19th, so like 3 days ago.
He may not know Lakers Celtics is a thing.
Look, I'm just assuming he wore the suit because, money, he's about to get paid, and good for him. Like it's an unfortunate turn of events for this one specific thing, but I'm not holding this against him. Like that's not his fault.
This
I'm
is
not
not
putting
like
this.
Jalen Rose wearing or didn't he wear like a white and red pinstripe suit because he thought he was going to the Clippers in his
Right,
draft?
like I am not holding this against young Jalen. Like this is not his fault. He's only 19.
He can Google it later.
Yeah, he can figure it out.
Oh my! Did I make a mistake?
Oh man, I'm sure he'll hear about it on social media and all that. Jalen Hood-Schifino off the board. Cam Whitmore still on the board. Who's the best on your board right now, Leaf? Like who's best available?
Other than Whitmore, I
just perpetually.
Yeah, well, I had to answer it factually. I like Leonard Miller an awful lot. He's someone I've got number 14. I also have Gigi Jackson 17 and Noah Clowney 18 are the three that have not been taken that I've got in this range.
The next on the board right now at the 18th pick is the Heat. The Heat are going. We don't know yet, but the Heat culture. They're going to bring in a player.
I could see Leonard Miller and Noah Clowney being the pick here.
Leonard Miller just feels like a Heat pick.
He does.
It feels like a guy that they would take. Like, all right, we're bringing you into our culture, and you're just gonna do exactly what we want, and then you'll be great.
I feel like Miami's going to take Whitmore. I feel like this is a chance for them to take a bit of a swing at a guy that is pretty high up. I don't know why he's fallen so far, but he's kind of a consensus top 10 guy. It's pretty crazy that he's had a chance to fall down to the Heat. They're starting to get into places where this is a lottery talent that might be available to pretty good teams.
We've been saying this on every pick. It feels like that. Oh, they should take Cam.
No,
we
that's
talked about
true.
it. We talked about it with the Mavs. We talked about it with the Jazz. Leaf wanted to take him, and then they didn't take him, and it just
they didn't take him twice.
Yeah, twice now. It's just been over. It's the
so
strangest
help me
thing.
God if he falls to 18 or 28.
The last Jazz pick.
I don't think he'll make it. I could see the Grizzlies trading up again, unless he has a terrible physical. Memphis is known to, like, Brandon Clark is a great example, a guy that tumbles down the draft board. I could see them trying to do something. Now they may not have enough to get into the first round again, but they have a history on draft night of trading up into the first round.
We've got the Heat at 18, the Warriors still at 19, even though they made the Chris Paul trade. We can talk about that in a minute. The Rockets at 20, maybe they're trying to trade up to get him. That would be a weird fit with all their wings that can score there at that point. The Nets with 2 picks, that feels like you can take a risk if you've got 2 picks there with the Nets.
Yeah, I think that they take a swing on one of them. I was initially thinking they could go with like Gigi Jackson, someone who's really talented, or Dereck Whitehead, who's got some medical concerns in his own regard, and then the other
Leonard Miller too,
pick.
yeah.
And Leonard Miller. I think Leonard Miller is a fairly high upside play actually, but he's still regarded as safe in my opinion. So I was anticipating the Nets take a swing. The Heat, I think, have the luxury to do so as well, like you brought up.
Okay, we have the pick. This is who I thought it was going to be. Are you ready? Make your prediction, Leaf.
I'm going to go with Leonard Miller or Jaime Jaquez Jr.
With the 18th pick, the Miami Heat select Jaime Jaquez from
Check
UCLA.
you out.
This guy apparently was killing all of his draft workouts, Leaf. What was he showing teams that made him go all the way to 18? Because I think at one point he was like mid-second round, early second round.
Yeah, he's a crafty competitor. Like he's a college basketball All-American who knows how to play. Like this is the type of guy you would try to avoid if you were an agent, like playing with your prospect. The reason that I had a clue on this one was because a couple days ago I saw Jaime Jaquez to the Heat rumors, and I didn't think it would be the pick because I thought there'd be some players on the board like there are that would be more enticing and they have the luxury. But he is the Heat culture guy. Like he is the grittiest, toughest dude, rebounds, battles. Like he had a horribly sprained ankle in both of the last 2 tournaments, and he somehow battled his way into being like basically all tournament team had UCLA made the Final Four in either of them. Like he's Heat culture of Heat culture. He is absolutely one of the dogs I should have mentioned at the tip of this show when you asked me about which players are dogs. But I can't hate on the pick. I think it's a reach, but like the Heat know what they're doing.
David Ramil, Locked On Heat host, just said, "Welcome to Portland." to Jaime Jaquez, thinking that there could be a Dame to the Heat trade.
I think that's pretty likely. I don't know why Lillard would stay if Henderson's going to stay there. I don't think
because
he
just does. Like, I mean,
yeah, but at some point, like I don't know. I get the idea, and I do think that it's mentally healthy for these guys to go kind of anti-Jordan and anti-Kobe and just say, I'm happy where I am.
Yeah.
I think there's legitimate good in that. But there's also a biological clock, right? That has to be ticking for him where you're just like, I'd like to play in the NBA finals, right? Or at least be somewhere where they're openly pursuing that. I don't know how you can make that argument for Portland right now that they are openly pursuing it. That to me, what is the difference between Portland and Detroit in this current moment, aside from having maybe more money invested in guys like Nurkic?
Well, it's the direction they're going, right? The Portland seems to be going all the way down,
correct.
And Detroit's going on the way up.
Right. But Detroit is actively building, right? Like they are not coming out and saying we want to contend for a championship. If Damian Lillard is that happy that he's willing to be in that spot and be that mentor, God bless him. But he just had the best offensive season of his career, and Portland tanked at the end. Like, at what stage do you draw that line? I think it's going to be really interesting over the next week or so.
And then you had the weird rumor where they're like, well, the Portland Trailblazers are going to go after Bam Adebayo to try and help Damian Lillard. And you're like, what is that? They went in on that on Locked On NBA. Jake Madison and John Corrales did.
Just seems fake. Seems like a fake. See, we're trying.
Well, it's
trying.
It's in the same category of rumor as the Kyrie Irving is recruiting LeBron James to come to the Mavericks.
Right.
It's like, oh, okay.
I agree.
You're just trying to make a point. I don't know what point you're trying to make at this point, but you are still trying.
Super confusing.
You're trying to do something.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jaime Jaquez goes to the Heat at 18, and now on the board we have the Golden State Warriors, who made a trade that honestly baffled me earlier today. The Golden State Warriors acquire Chris Paul, and the Washington Wizards get Jordan Poole, a 2030 top 20 protected first. Joe Mullinax, thoughts on the Warriors getting Chris Paul, as you have had many run-ins now with them in the playoffs?
Yeah, I'm not sure they got better. I think that the interesting thing about the Warriors is, to me, this all says that they're going to try to run it back, which makes me feel better about giving up that first next year. Like, the Warriors aren't going to be bad, right? Steph Curry still exists. They're going to be a playoff team. That pick's going to be outside of the lottery, barring a catastrophic injury to Steph Curry. But again, I don't know that Chris Paul, unless you think Steph is a better defender than he gets credit for. So if you just see Curry as your shooting guard moving forward and you let Paul be that facilitator and creator, obviously Draymond Green's coming back. To me, that was one of the things I thought as well. Like, unless they just lowball him, which I don't see why Golden State would, they'll make another run at it. And I think they got better. I'm not positive that's true. But in fairness to Golden State, if I'm going to be excited about Marcus Smart, in part because he can help with the vibes, separating Jordan Poole and Draymond Green, almost certainly, assuming Draymond comes back, that will help the Warriors too. They won't have that hovering over them, and that'll be helpful. So I don't know how much better that made the Warriors, but I do think it makes their life easier, and it definitely cleans up their books a little bit, right? Instead of having Poole on the books for the next several years, I think Paul is either in 1 or 2 years left on his deal. I know that they could have waived him technically if they wanted to, but it cleans up their future cap situation as the luxury tax rules get a little bit more complicated with the new CBA.
It definitely clears up books for them. To me, they'll talk about the benefits of Chris Paul. Like you said the thing, do they get better? Well, they bring in Chris Paul. They're at least going to run some more pick and roll. I know that Warriors fans have been clamoring. Can we run some more pick and roll? Can we run some more offense? Can we do some more stuff? They're going to at least run that more with Chris Paul. You're going to have some more options as a playmaker. It felt like it was Draymond as a playmaker. And then a lot of times it was, well, Steph Curry, do something with the ball in your hands. Do something at that point. So they're going to do that a little bit more. They've added another adult in the room, which I think that team actually needed at a certain point, because they have these guys coming off the bench, and Kuminga and Moody, and now Patrick Baldwin that they think can make a leap maybe in year 2. And so now they have Chris Paul to run that second unit for them. Right. And now we know who they're going to take, at least according to Shams Charania. Leaf, make the prediction.
Oh boy. Should I just go with Cam Whitmore for fun?
You should not.
It didn't work out last time.
Leonard Miller. That's my actual prediction.
The Golden State Warriors at number 19 are selecting Brandon Podziemski.
No! Not AirPods. Not AirPods.
At 19, though, he rose in the draft league.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that one shocks me.
19 said, Leaf, you're the draft expert. You got to I don't even know how to pronounce this guy's name. I don't think.
Brandon Podziemski. Okay.
Podziemski.
Yeah, Podziemski. He's a 6'4" point guard, left-handed from Santa Clara. I interacted with him at the combine, and he had a really cool quote. It was, "I'm not just I'm a hooper who can shoot, not a shooter who can hoop." So yeah, he's a basketball player first who just happens to be a good shooter. But what he does is he fills stat sheets. He's a very good passer. He's someone that at the combine, my concern was how can he contend defensively? And he had this anticipatory ability to get in the way, which, you stereotypically are he might be a liability defensively, but he was the best passer at the combine, got people open shots, made his shots. And I knew he'd rise. I didn't think it would be this meteoric of a rise to 19, and particularly playing for a team that has 2 of the best point guards now of the generation. It's as good as it gets for him to learn. I just thought they'd fill positions other than the one there.
You had him on your big board at 34. This is a real rise for him. Does this seem like a reach to you, or do you think he's risen recently that this warrants this pick?
I can see a way it makes sense. The reason I was lower about what he does is I think he's got to find the perfect situation to be able to impact the game, whereas a lot of the players that are in the later stages of the first round are wings. And I think there's just more accessible pathways to playing basketball on playoff teams, which are the ones drafting here at a wing position, than an on-ball guard. He's not an off-ball guard. He is a point guard. And I think it's hard to show your best attribute, which is pick and roll navigation, being a wizard seeing the floor, if you're defensively deficient. So maybe he'll be a table setting guard. It's just, I saw fewer pathways for him to do so.
Joe, this is somebody you were excited about. What do you think he brings to
AirPods?
What do you think he brings to?
Well, he probably fills the Dante slot in Golden State. That would make sense to me as that type of player. He obviously can learn from Chris Paul and Steph Curry. That's pretty cool. I just love, he was one of the best rebounders in all of college basketball, especially as a guard. And I saw a lot of effort plays when I watched his film and kind of looked into how he was competing. It was really cool to see how he fit in defensively. One-on-one defense, I think you're exactly right. He's probably going to be a liability at times, but he looks like he could be a really solid scheme defender. He's going into a good situation in Golden State in terms of established systems. I think it probably does, and I wanted him in Memphis. I think that it doesn't get much better for him going to the Warriors. He won't be asked to be too much, but he will have a specific role that he'll be able to grow into with Golden State if, DiVincenzo is gone, which I to me, that's what this says. This guy is replacing DiVincenzo.
Leif Thulin, make the prediction. Number 20, Houston Rockets.
And they were clamoring to get up. Do they take a wing to complement shooting? I think that's got to be what it is. No one's really sticking out to me right here of who they could take. I'm going to go with Bryce Sensabaugh. Oh, actually, no, I take that back. Chris Murray.
The first time Leif Thulin doesn't guess Cam Whitmore. Cam Whitmore goes to the Houston Rockets at number, literally the first time you haven't predicted him. He goes to the Houston Rockets at number 20. His slide ends. Woj tweeted this. The Houston Rockets are strongly considering ending Whitmore's slide at 20. Decision looming there. Glad he's not tipping picks, but he'll do that. Man, Cam Whitmore going 20. They could have got him people were talking about getting him at 4, and now they get him at 20. Your thoughts?
I mean, if he's able to play basketball with the way that he's sliding, then they got a great pick. Like, I had him number 5 on my big board. He's 6'6", 235 pounds, freight train with 200 with a 41-inch vertical. Shot the ball well, creates for himself. Isolation was excellent. Transition was super super good, and all these metrics. And defensively, I think when he paid attention, he would decide, I'm going to take the best players out of the game. He took the best players in college basketball out of the game. Like, Tyler Kolek was the Big East player of the year. Put Whitmore on him, Villanova nearly beat Marquette, who's a 2 seed, and Villanova was terrible. Like, he's a great player. It's just really the question becomes, okay, can he play basketball now if he's going to slide to 20 when he was going to go 5 by most mocks 3 days ago?
It's still wild to me that he slid all the way to 20. We were talking about him at 4 at some point. Some people were even saying, like, oh, could he be the one that jumps into the top 3? Like, just throwing it out there. But he was like the maybe a player that they could do that. Now they take him at 20. It's an interesting spot now. They have so much talent over there in Houston. Ime Udoka has so much to figure out with this Rockets team. Like, how do you put all these guys? There's going to be so many guys that want the ball in their hands. So many guys that want to score, want to pass, want to do a lot of things. They've got a lot to figure out with that crew over there now with Cam Whitmore going there, because he thought he was maybe a top 5 pick. Now he goes to 20. By the way, he's losing a lot of money. Like, how much money did he just lose going from 5 to 20? I mean, that's a lot. If Real GM usually has him. The 5th pick makes $6.6 million in their first year. The 20th pick makes $2.6. So he just lost $4 million that slide in 1 year, just in his first year. You can go and extrapolate the rest of it out, but this is an incredible slide that we haven't seen in a while, and we're still kind of waiting to hear why. Our guess this whole time has been that it's just his knee, like just his knee injury has been the thing that people are really scared of. But I don't know, man. Like, guys come back from knee injuries all the time. Like, there can be degenerative stuff, I guess, and we're seeing Kawhi and guys have issues, but like, it's baffling to me. But here we are with the Rockets taking him at 20. And I bet Jackson Gatlin at the draft is super excited about this.
I mean, you gotta be. If he's able to play, they have the most athletic team in the NBA. Like, they added Amen Thompson, Jalen Green, Cam Whitmore, Jabari Smith Jr., and Alperen Şengün. Like, that, it's super young. They're gonna have growing pains, but man, are they talented.
A comment in the chat says that this is the same kind of talk as EJ Liddell last year, and he messed up his knee within a week. Any thoughts on the comparison between the two? I mean, they're not the same player at all, but like,
well, Whitmore was a freshman, one and done sensation. Liddell was like a tweener who was a very good college basketball player that kind of came out of nowhere, and then he screwed up his knee. Like, I don't know. I hope Whitmore doesn't have the same issue. Maybe he already has hurt his knee. But I mean, sure, I guess there's a correlation. I just don't think there's necessarily like a strong tie here.
It's interesting. We have we have Cam Whitmore finally off the board. His slide ends, and now I think I even put it in the description of this, like, how far does Cam Whitmore slide? Is now we know that he goes all the way to 20 with the Houston Rockets. They had the picks to take the risk on this. They got Amen Thompson, who they think is going to be a guaranteed player, and now they take a risk on somebody Cam Whitmore, it's worth it for them, right? Who else were they going to take at this pick that would have, been anywhere close to what he could be?
Yeah, I think Leonard Miller and Noah Clowney would have been the two that I would have considered.
Yeah.
Kind of positional backup 4s and 5s who have the growth potential to be very good. But then I kind of forgot they had Tari Eason, who I also love.
Yeah.
So that didn't make as much sense now that I thought about it. But that's a no-brainer pick to me. I just didn't want to say Cam Whitmore any more times and be baffled why no one was taking him.
And the one time you don't say it, now here we are, and we see Cam Whitmore now. Just now that pick got he's just now getting up, and finally his slide ends. He's walking.
That's good. That's good.
I mean,
I suppose he didn't tear his ACL like in a workout or something.
We're looking for anything now as to why he would slide, but yeah, he's walking around. He does not look very happy.
I wouldn't be either.
It looks like he's got some tears in his eyes, if I'm just trying to read into body language. But yeah, and now all of a sudden he's got a lot to prove. Like all those guys that always look at who was taken above me. I mean, he's got 19 guys that are ahead of him, and maybe Wembanyama's not a name he wants to mention over and over. But I mean, he can now take that list and repeat it over and over again and try and prove all these guys wrong. And he's got an opportunity to with the Houston Rockets. Cam Whitmore finally goes to the Houston Rockets. And now we got the Nets. The Nets with 2 picks in a row. Leif, who are you looking at with the Nets? Now with pick 21 and 22, there's been a lot of talks about them trading. But this team is kind of in a rebuild and in a weird spot with a rebuild because they've got Mikal Bridges, but he's not as young as you think. He's 27, 28 now. Cam Johnson is a free agent. There's been a lot of talks about him getting a deal worth like $20 million a year. They have to make some kind of move just because of luxury tax reasons. And they need to get some kind of young talent. They've got Nick Claxton, Cam Thomas. They don't really have a ton of young talent with starting this rebuild.
Yeah, I think that they probably go with a safer pick here, and I'd bet it's Clowney or Leonard Miller, one of the two. And then the other one may be a swing pick, and the guys I would look at would be like Dereck Whitehead, G.G. Jackson. One other name that could be intriguing would be Olivier-Maxence Prosper, who's really risen up boards because he shot really well in a Pacers workout in a drill called Ring the Bell, and he's also defensively oriented. So those are the couple names that I'd look at. Oh, and Nick Smith Jr. is available.
We got a quote from Scoot Henderson about why Dame should stay with the Blazers, which is an interesting line of questioning for somebody. He said, if we combine our games, it'll be over. Scoot and Damian Lillard. I guess that's true.
That'd be pretty fun.
Oh, coming in from the Pacers facility, Tony East on the broadcast. Look at that. Even with the logos and everything behind you. Cam Whitmore just went off the board at 20 to the Houston Rockets.
Wow. I have missed every pick between about 8 and now, so I have to catch up at some point.
You want me to go back over them? I guess I could.
No, I saw a list through Grady Dick, so I've got a decent idea of what's going on. Crazy day.
Your thoughts on the trade? Bilal Coulibaly technically taken by the Pacers, then traded. Jarace Walker now going to the Pacers, and then the trade down to get a couple of seconds.
Yeah, great work by the NBA to get Jarace Walker in a Wizards hat and Coulibaly in a Pacers hat for all of 5 minutes.
I know. We've talked about it so many times.
Yeah, Walker's perfect for them, right? Like, I picked him in the Locked On mock draft. Like, I thought he'd be an excellent fit for this team with his defensive versatility, and that offensive upside, I think, separated him from some other forwards in the top 10, making him a perfect fit with these guys. And it works out really well that apparently there was some competition for Coulibaly that made the Wizards want to do this. They moved up 1 spot, which means by default, someone else had to be discussing the trade with the Pacers, right? Or else they could have just taken him at 8. So credit to the Pacers for getting their guy and assets. I think that's really impressive for a team in their position.
Our question was, and I think Andy Kamenetsky brought this up earlier, is like, why the Wizards do this? Like, who are they competing with? And like that 2 seconds got them over the hump.
Right. Exactly. There had to be
someone
else offering a very small price to get to 7. But I mean, if you're the Pacers, it's better than nothing, right? So that's totally fine. It's just, it is a really small price for one move in the first round, right? But I'm sure the Pacers will absolutely take it. But again, they get Walker either way, and we just did our Zoom with him. He said that before the 7th pick, he was told he's going to the Pacers, right? So he says, okay, cool. And then they call someone else's name. And for a brief second, he was a little confused before it all got straightened out for him in that moment. So it must have been pretty quick how that was all kind of shaking and sorting itself out for him.
Jarace Walker and Miles Turner are like I was just an incredible fit of two players that can both shoot the three, defend at a really high level at the rim, in space, all that. Like I was looking at that saying, man, can the Mavs do something and get these guys together? Can we finally get Miles Turner in Dallas? But I'm very jealous of Rick Carlisle's front court now.
Well, I'm jealous of what the Mavs have done, to be totally clear. Like they had a really good day too, I think, since we're talking about each other's teams. But yes, the Pacers maneuvers were really smart, and they've needed defense so bad. Like the last time they had a forward who could defend, I guess, was TJ Warren, but he only played 70-something games to them. Really, it was Thaddeus Young, and he left 5 seasons ago, right? It's been forever.
Oh, with the classic graphic of him with LeBron and like the stat line and all, oh my goodness.
That's right. So, they've needed somebody in that role for forever. And so Walker could be that guy. I don't know if he'll be a day one starter for them, right? They have playoff aspirations next year. Perhaps he's a 25, 30-minute a game guy off the bench, but he can play maybe the 3 or the 5 a little bit too. So there'll be minutes for him. But yeah, I don't know what his instant impact will be, but a great fit for what they need, which is a home run, honestly.
Leaf, make the prediction. Number 21, the Brooklyn Nets, before I tip the pick.
I'll go with Leonard Miller.
With the 21st pick, the Brooklyn Nets select Noah Clowney. Should have gone with your gut earlier. You were talking about Noah Clowney to them. What does Noah Clowney bring to the Brooklyn Nets?
I knew it was going to be one of the two. That I felt really good about. Noah Clowney, to me, is a guy who will be able to play the 4 and the 5, provide energy, eventually shoot the ball well. He shot 47% of his shots as threes because he was playing out of position as a 4 on a jumbo front court at Alabama. I think he can learn very easily from Nick Claxton and provide a lot of similar traits, maybe not quite at the level defensively that Nick Claxton does. But I think Clowney is someone who's very impactful, can play 6th, 7th man type of minutes, and then down the road be a starter.
Cool. All right, back to the Pacers now that we've talked about the pick that's been made. You get Jarace Walker. Now they have the 26th pick. Is there somebody that you're eyeing that's dropping, or somebody that the Pacers could get with the 26th pick?
Can I say Leonard Miller, who we just talked about for a second? I watched him work out a little bit here, and he was working with Rick Carlisle on some shooting motion-y stuff. We'll see if the Pacers actually pick at 26, right? It's unclear how many rookies they're actually willing to take in. Hence all the action you've already seen from them. They've already traded 2 of their picks and moved back twice. They've made 3 trades. I can't even keep up with all these shorts I'm making, talking about all of them. But yeah, 26 is going to be really interesting because it's plausible for them to bring in 2 rookies, I suppose. But I'd expect they take at 26 to be more of a project anyway. They don't really have any minutes to give out at this time, right? So that's kind of why. I mean, Miller's not really a project, but a little bit he is, and he's a little on the younger side. So I might skew to any project-y wings for the Pacers just to have somebody developing as the rest of their core kind of takes off. But there's a lot of ways they could truly go with it if they even actually stay at 26.
Leaf, could this be a James Najee spot where they take a guy that could develop a little bit, a big?
I don't think so. I'd imagine I don't think they would. But in fairness, I mean, you can stow and stash more easily with a guaranteed.
That's true. Yeah, they could do that. But interesting. Do you expect any more moves from the Pacers? They made a bunch of them. How many rookies are they going to bring in? Right now, it would be 2, right? Do they have any seconds?
2 firsts, and they have 2 seconds. They have 47 and 55. But part of the advantage of the trade they made today, where they brought in a crap ton of cash from the Lakers to move back 7 spots, is this isn't like a hard line, but the 40th pick very rarely gets a 2-way, but the 47th pick could get a 2-way, and the Pacers roster crunch, where they only have 3 roster spots, that's really valuable that they could have that negotiating tool to add that player with a different type of contract. So it's possible they make all 3 of the rest of their picks, and their later 2 in the second round would just get 2-ways. And you guys know this, but now the league has 3 of those, right? So that's more flexibility for a team who has those late seconds, especially with the second round pick exception. Those picks have become more valuable. So I don't know, perhaps they just sell away or trade or punt one of those second rounders because they don't have a lot of room to bring in guys, but we'll see what they end up doing with any of these spots. Cause I always thought the number in my head was at most 3, with one of them being a 2-way. So 4 just seems too high given their situation, but we'll see. There's still some time to make some stuff happen.
So you don't know if Jarace Walker is going to start necessarily. You say that you doubt that he will. What do you think the starting lineup could be for the Pacers with moves to come in free agency and all that?
Mathurin didn't even start last year until the last 8 or so games behind Buddy Hield. And the Pacers have 30-ish million in cap space. Now that the cap went up that extra $2 million today, right? So they could bring in someone serious, and they really want some forwards and wings, man. They have for forever. Last year, they were starting guards at those spots all season. So it would not shock me at all if they went out and got a Harrison Barnes, who played for Carlisle, as you know, has played with Halliburton, or a Kyle Kuzma, or a Tobias Harris in a trade, something, just to get someone who can start at that spot, because they want to make the playoffs next year. They haven't for the last 3 years, and they showed they were a team of that quality at their best last year when Turner and Halliburton were both available. They were 27 and 22, right? It's a pretty good team. But that wasn't, it's only 49 games, but I think they're ready to take the next step. So whoever they would be hunting for in free agency, I think, would start. And then their three could be Mathurin or Heald or someone else. And then Walker would be their super sub at the forward spots. That's just a guess, though. It depends on what happens in free agency, obviously.
It's an interesting spot where the Pacers are. They're definitely trending up. Does it feel like they have? Does it feel like with Tyrese Halliburton they have like the star of the future, or do you feel like they still are needing that other move for them to really like take off?
I mean, tell me if I'm off base, but when he was playing and the Pacers were in that 6, 7, 8 range in the East until early March, I mean, he was in the All-NBA conversation to me as one of the 6 best guards in the league, maybe just outside of it. I mean, I'm obviously well connected to the Pacers because I'm around them every day, but I thought I heard at least enough buzz to say that he was in the conversation, even though I wouldn't have said he was one of the best 6. So he's only 23, right? They certainly view him as that franchise cornerstone level piece, maybe the best passer in the NBA. If not, obviously you can give that to Jokic, and I would be just fine with that. And I could say second best, and that's cool too. But that's a fantastic piece to have. Sets the pace for them every night. And every single player in the NBA fits with someone like him, right? Like, even if you can't shoot, he'll find you cutting, he'll find you in transition, he'll find you in your spots, right? And that's really appealing for other players who may end up with the Pacers someday. So he's definitely a franchise level guy. And the question is, can he make everybody better? Is it just a really good fit with the last team? The Pacers will figure out a lot this year as they themselves try to get better.
Interesting spot for the Pacers. Jarace Walker going there. They've got another pick coming up.
What do we have right now? 21 just happened?
21 just happened with Noah Clowney. Tony, if you want to stick around, you can.
I'll probably hop off after like 23 or 24.
All right, so we're seeing now Noah Clowney walking through. He's excited, man. He is like happy as can be to walk around and get drafted there. We have no more rumors. We're still waiting. Like the Nets are still on the clock. You'd think that they would just go back to back. Like, all right, we know who we're going to take, but this could mean that they're trying to make some kind of trade or make some kind of move. They've been in talks with a lot of people. Zach Lowe had the rumor that they're asking a lot for both Dorian Finney-Smith and for Royce O'Neal, but they've got to make some kind of move, some kind of trade, or they just like take Royce O'Neal's contract off the books, because if they're going to re-sign Cam Johnson, they're going to be in the luxury tax, and you don't want to be in the luxury tax for a team that's going to be as good as Brooklyn's going to be next year. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
On the other hand, if there's an owner who will pay it for a not great team, Joe Tsai is that owner.
I guess, but I mean, they really will not be great next year.
I agree. I agree with you, to be clear. Just there is the devil's advocate to play.
Is Ben Simmons going to come back for them? I just come back to that. Like, we saw him with the photoshopped muscles, but are we ever going to see him play again? Because he's making 30.
Wow, I'm caught up on the picks. Whitmore went to 20. That is crazy. That is really crazy.
To the Rockets, who a lot of people thought he could go to them at 4.
At 4. Yeah, Jackson's going to have a fun day tomorrow on Locked On Rockets, breaking that down. I'm sure many will declare them the winners of the draft based on that value, which maybe it'll turn out to be correct.
I mean, the Spurs are the winner of the draft.
Okay, you are right. Sorry.
We can go back to the Rockets. With them, like, they've got a lot to figure out. Like, Ime Udoka, he was known for like, all right, I'm gonna be the guy to come in and set a culture and do that. I mean, he's got to do that on a degree that at least we didn't see in Boston, because those guys were already pretty mature and had been to conference finals and had played some playoff games. What do you think about Ime and this job that he has now with all these young guys that were taken high or were high, like picks or highly ranked and all that, Tony?
If I'm allowed to speak on this, it's interesting the way that they definitely have, like, every time the Rockets make a transaction, I'm like, yeah, that's good. They've won that transaction or they did something smart in that moment. But the totality of it doesn't add up, if that makes any sense. Like, that's why I think their culture's a little off and why they haven't developed the way that many thought. I actually think the Wizards had this with their old GM too. They had a lot of individual transactions that you go, yeah, that was good, but the totality of them didn't sum very well. And so now I think the Rockets are bringing in things that will make those pieces sum together with Udoka, with a creator like Amen Thompson, with whoever they sign, because it's been very well reported, even the team saying it very publicly, like that was the end of their phase, as they called it, was this past season. They want to be better next year. I don't know how that's going to work, but whoever they sign should be the pieces that connect to these young guys to winning, and they have the coach to do it now. So I know that their culture is great. I think that's been well reported. I think their team is a little clunky as it stands right this second on June 22nd, but in 9 days, I think it'll look pretty good, and they've got the right coach to kind of make them a winner. Do you agree with that? Is that weird? They're just kind of an odd team right now.
Ime's got his work come out for him. That's for sure. I mean, it's just so many egos. If you think about Jabari Smith, the third pick, Jalen Green, the second pick, Amen Thompson, the fourth pick, Cam Whitmore's like, I should have been a top 5 pick. I mean, there's just some Alfred Şengün's like, hey, I don't care where I was drafted. I'm just the best player out of all of us here. It's a lot of things to figure out. Leaf, we know who the Brooklyn Nets picked at 22. Make the prediction, and then I'll tell you. I'll tip the pick.
I saw it, but it makes sense.
With the 22nd pick, the Brooklyn Nets will select Dereck Whitehead. So now they take Noah Clowney and Dereck Whitehead from Duke back to back. What are your thoughts on Dereck Whitehead now going to the Nets, Leaf?
I love those picks. Both of them I had in my top 20. Dereck Whitehead is a 43% three-point shooter, someone who played on the ball in high school, suffered through some injuries, and I think people are highly sleeping on what he can do because unlike Grady Dick, Jordan Hawkins, and Jet Howard, who I describe as shooters, Dereck Whitehead's got upside to be more than a shooter, and he is in the same capacity shooting-wise. Like he shot just as well as they did. So really good shooter, someone with capacity to be better than just a shooter. And he was a top 5 high school recruit. He's just battled some injuries, so we'll see what he comes out to be. But I really like that from the Nets from both picks.
Now what are they building here with the Nets? I mean, Mikal Bridges is now like the guy that they're building around. They have Cam Johnson, maybe we'll come back to them. They think Nick Claxton. Now they've got these two guys. What do you think about what they're building with the Brooklyn Nets, Leaf?
It's interesting. I would say that they building around Bridges is a good idea for what they've done immediately. It's just hard to build around someone that's become a star all of a sudden after being a tertiary option his entire career. And so I feel like it's going to be short-lived, but they also, like Tony alluded to, that they'll spend. They're not afraid to spend. So maybe they've got a ability to build a kind of multi-dimensional, versatile team that's oriented around wings. And then they find someone that becomes their actual star down the road. So I think right now the direction isn't clear, but they've set themselves up for potential success in the future.
Tony, people keep saying that I'm still getting more tweets that I look like Grady Dick. Do you agree that do you think I look like Grady Dick?
The hair swoop, maybe, I suppose. You need the blam and red jacket.
I know. I need that. Can I do some kind of like green screen where I get the?
It was funny because Wemby kept making those references that he's an alien, and I'm like, bro, Grady Dick's the one I can see from outer space. My God, that guy looks crazy today. I guess so. The hair certainly is very similar. See, when I actually met Grady Dick, he was really sweaty and his hair was kind of covered his face. So then that was like the day before you guys did the Locked On Mavs show, breaking him down. So I was like, Nick doesn't look anything like Grady Dick. And then I looked at more pictures. I'm like, man, yeah, I see it.
It's just some pictures. All right, we have the pick for Portland at 23, Leaf. Make the prediction and I'll tip the pick.
Leonard Miller or Maxwell Lewis.
You want to do a third one?
No.
With the 23rd pick, the Portland Trailblazers select Chris Murray.
Oh, that makes sense.
Oh, that's one pick before the Kings could take the brotherhood.
Literally one pick before the Kings could have taken Keegan Murray's brother. What does Chris Murray bring to the Blazers, though?
He brings a defined role. He's someone who will space the floor, contribute, and compete on defense, and he'll know what to do. Like, he's a very heady player, not a tremendous athlete, but he knows where to be, how to play, shoots the ball well from three. His numbers dipped a little bit this year with a higher usage rate, but his catch and shoot's very good, and he's someone that won't try to do too much.
That's good. I mean, that's what they need in Portland. Now, all of a sudden, they're building something where they've got role players, they've got Simons, they have Shaedon Sharp, they take Scoot. I mean, they've got a really good young core all of a sudden, and then Damian Lillard just still like the the Splinter with the Ninja Turtles meme. I don't know if you've seen that, where he's like young and then all of a sudden they grow up around him. What are your thoughts on this young core that Portland has now put together?
It's fascinating. I think if Damian Lillard stays, Scoot's going to be benefited, but it will stunt his immediate growth. Anthony Simons, Scoot, and Shaedon Sharpe. I don't see all of them staying though. But I'm very intrigued to see how they make that work, because all three of those guys are superb athletes who like the ball in their hands, and obviously they still have Damian Lillard.
Well, now they have stuff that they could trade for Bam Adebayo, Tony. Like they could go make that move. Portland could.
All right, fellas. First of all, I love the Blazers' young core. I don't know if they're going to trade Dame or not, but Scoot and Shaedon, that's gross. Soon going to hop off. I might be back though. I will let you know momentarily.
Appreciate it, Tony. Go listen to Locked On Pacers for all the
That's
stuff
right.
on the
I already have
Pacers.
a short up, a video up. I reshared the Jarace Walker podcast. There's a lot you can dig into already for Locked On Pacers.
Killing it over on Locked On Pacers and frequently on Locked On NBA. Appreciate it.
That's right.
Okay. Chris Murray goes to the Portland Trailblazers. We're now sitting here waiting for the next pick. The Sacramento Kings. Leaf, if you're the Sacramento Kings, who's best available? Who are you looking at for them with this pick right now?
I think Leonard Miller's one because he's a tremendous rebounder, and that's what they were victimized by Kevon Looney. Like, Looney dominated the glass. The other person I'd consider would be James Nagy. This is the one spot at the front court, or maybe they just go best player available, and I think there's a couple guys you can make an argument. I also would say Leonard Miller's the best player available. The last player I would consider, just because they're going to want to get better defensively because they were atrocious defensively and very good offensively, would be Olivier-Maxence Prosper.
That's the last player you'd think?
That's the last player that I would say is in the top three of who I would consider.
Interesting. Isaac, my co-host, loves Olivier-Maxence Prosper.
I think he's good. I'm not saying that's like low on the priority list. Those are just that's the trio.
Like if they're going with like maybe a little bit of a reach, but a guy that could fit with them.
I could see him going here for sure. If he's an improved shooter, he's a disruptive defender. I just think Leonard Miller fits what they need more, just because they were brutalized on the defensive glass. Like that was embarrassing to watch at times. There's this guy in Utah. His name's Gordy Chiesa. He's a former coach. He was on Jerry Sloan's staff. One time, he's got a very thick East Coast accent, and he was doing a podcast. He was like, "Now they just need to go get the ball." And that's all I could think. That's all I could think is like, I could just see him like getting grumpy about them not rebounding. And he's absolutely right for it.
If you're still here listening on Locked On Mavericks, Adrian Wojnarowski reports the Kings are trading Richaun Holmes and number 24 to Dallas.
So they lose their only rebounder?
Well, Richaun Holmes didn't play for them at all last year.
I know.
But now the Mavericks have the 24th pick, which is exciting. I don't know what they're giving them. Maybe their future pick. Maybe they're just taking the Richaun Holmes. Like, oh my gosh, if they take Omax here, Isaac is gonna faint. I'm gonna have to like get Isaac to just jump on here. Oh my goodness,
I'd imagine that's got to be high on the priority list. Leonard.
Oh
Miller
my goodness.
First of all, when I say Star Wars,
Sacramento Kings are selecting Olivier-Maxence Prosper to number 24 and trading him to Dallas. Isaac Harris. Oh my goodness, he's been on this for so long, like months. He's been on him and loves him. Wanted to bring him to Dallas. And they're trading Richaun Holmes into the traded player exception created in the OKC trade. And it doesn't seem like anything's going from Dallas's side to the Kings. They just wanted to get off that contract and using their first round pick. We'll see what happens. Maybe it's Tim Hardaway. They're using the traded player exception. So it's got to be like a pick, or it's either the future first, or like there's really nothing else the Mavericks could send them at this point. But tell me about Olivier-Maxence Prosper. What are the Mavericks getting in this pick, and why is Isaac Harris going to faint where he stands?
Hyperactive, defensive, high motor guy who's going to run the floor, spot up, and he's an improved shooter. He shot 34% from three at Marquette, was disruptive as a defender, and where he made his money is he played Jordan Hawkins and absolutely locked him up. Twice. They played 3 times. 2 of the times he absolutely locked him up. And to toot my own horn a little bit, I had Olivier-Maxence Prosper around 30-35 after he played Marquette. So he played for Marquette after they played UConn the second time. The third time was an amazing game in the Big East tournament, but the second time I moved him up. I checked a bunch of mock drafts, a bunch of big boards. Granted, some of them didn't have it as going as far. I didn't see him top 60 in very many places. And now he's a first-round pick. So I think that's the game that made him his money.
which is incredible. I'm very excited for this. I think this is a great move, and I haven't seen anything else. So the Mavericks are just taking on the salary. This is a big move for the Mavericks to take in Richaun Holmes' salary. It's not a good one. He didn't play for the Kings. They needed rebounding. They needed a big, and they didn't play him, which is not a good sign to take on that. But he's a player that a lot of people have talked about, Richaun Holmes, and he's actually only making $12 million this year. He's got a player option for $12.8 million next year. So it's not as I thought it was a year longer. It's actually only 2 years now that you have him, and he was serviceable at some point. So maybe he comes in and he is your starting center, at least for a little while, to give Dereck Lively some time. I don't expect him to play. The Mavericks now have this weird rotation of bigs where Dwight will probably come back on a minimum. JaVale McGee will still be there. Maxey will still be there. Dereck Lively will still be there. Richaun Holmes maybe will be there. Like, they've got this weird collection of fives now. But this move to just get back into the draft and to get Olivier-Maxence Prosper is a great move. This is one where you were just waiting for Nico Harrison to just own the draft, to be like, all right, let's do something good. Like, let's do something where it's a guaranteed win for the team. And I think this is a guaranteed win for them. Maybe it takes down some flexibility later on because they're bringing back this player, but you kind of if you put it together with the Davis Bertans trade, they're sending out Davis Bertans' contract and bringing back Richaun Holmes, which is smaller, which is like $5 million smaller or something like that. So it's a really good move overall. They get really good value, and they get a guy that, oh my God, I'm dying. Isaac's tweet, go get Omax. This was like 10 minutes ago, and now he may have fainted because he has not texted me back in a little while. An incredible move by the Dallas Mavericks to now bring in somebody that they needed. Like you said, big wing, can do a lot, and they needed somebody like this really badly. Where do you see him fit in a rotation now? I know I'm putting you on the spot with the Mavericks, but could you see him getting some playing time early on for Jason Kidd if he comes in and plays some defense?
I think it's difficult to project him playing more than a guy like Josh Green.
Sure.
You obviously lost Dorian Finney-Smith, and then Bullock. He's still on the roster, right?
Bullock is still. He's got a non-guaranteed, so they could move on from him or stretch him if they decide to do something. But yeah, he's still on the roster. It should be.
Yeah. So I would say he'll play, but I don't think you can expect like rotation minutes yet. But I think he's got the capacity, should there be an injury or someone that falls out of favor, to impress. Like, I think he can ingratiate himself to Jason Kidd easily because he's got a clear path to playing time. I actually think a good comparison for him was Dorian Finney-Smith, someone who's defensively oriented, rugged, and is an improving shooter. Like, that's a good archetype for him, and that's why as soon as that trade happened, I said Omax. Like, it made sense. There were other players that would have made sense, but he's more proven as a commodity that will play that way than, someone like Andre Jackson, who really struggled to shoot despite being a tremendous athlete, or Julian Phillips, who's a very raw player who's talented.
And the other thing that a lot of people have talked about with Olivier-Maxence Prosper is he's just infectious. Like, you just see him in interviews, and you see his mentality, and the Mavericks need this really bad. Like, he exemplifies the spirit of a role player. Is something that KOC wrote in the Ringer mock draft, which is like exactly what the Mavericks need somebody that comes in and knows exactly what his role is. Oh, this is very exciting to get Dereck Lively, to get Omax in this draft, to only lose Davis Bertans really in 2 spots and really nothing else, which is interesting. All right, we have the Boston Celtics at the number 25 pick. Are you ready to make the prediction? And then I'll tip the pick. Leave.
Nick Smith Jr.
The Boston Celtics with the 25th pick are taking Marcus Sasser.
Oh, dang it. I said that at the beginning of the show.
And the Pistons are acquiring the 25th pick from the Celtics now.
For those of you who listened to all 3.5 hours so far, good on you guys. But I promise I said that at the beginning when John Corrales was on here.
But this is going to the Pistons, apparently. The Celtics are trading this pick and sending it to the Pistons. So what are the Pistons getting with Marcus Sasser?
A very good shooter, a guard who is, despite being diminutive in terms of height compared to the NBA standard, he's a tenacious defender. He's someone that will space the floor and actually fits in nicely with the way the Pistons play with big guards who handle the ball, because I think he's more of a 2 guard because he's a really, really good shooter, not a typical point guard. I like that. I wouldn't have taken him that high compared to some of the guys that are still available. I think there's more potential out there, but he's almost like a veteran presence as a rookie because he'll be able to play off ball, knock down threes, defend, harass guards.
There you go. Marcus Sasser going to the Pistons via a trade that we don't really know anything about yet. It just has been reported by Shams, Jake Fisher, and Adrian Wojnarowski that they are trading this to the Pistons. We'll see what any kind of move is. Still reeling from that Mavericks move. I'm very excited for it. They moved around, got 2 first-round picks out of just the 10th pick and Davis Bertans' contract so far. Hey, you wanted Nico Harrison to do something. He went out and did something. He went and got a lot of move. The Kings now have over $30 million in space, according to Nate Duncan. So that's what helps them to clear that space. And now they can go out and get, I don't know who they would want to get, Dylan Brooks or get another guard. It'd be weird for me for them to go after like Fred VanVleet or somebody like that. But I guess it's another wing. There's not a ton of wings out there. Celtics get the 31st pick in this trade, so they move down about 6 spots. The Pistons get the 25th pick. Not sure what else the Celtics are getting in this, but they're moving down some spots here. And just like Corrales said earlier, the Celtics wanted to get somebody that will that they can develop a little bit, that they don't have to take somebody that can play right now. So they move down, and here we are. There's no other picks have been made yet. But here we are, Leif Thulin of Locked On NBA Big Board. All right, let's do this. Today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Go check out Bird Dogs. They have incredible shorts. They have incredible pants. You can go get them. Bird Dogs fixed the issue of wanting to wear shorts that you can wear at like the beach, and you can also wear in a meeting if your office is pretty progressive, or if they are, allow shorts at all. You can wear them either way. Isaac wears them to his meetings. I wear them to mine, even though mine are all on Zoom. Bird Dogs uses anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that helps you keep cool and dry all day long. You can go get your Bird Dogs at birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA. And then you can get a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise. Go check them out. Again, birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA. Back here in the Locked On NBA Draft live show presented by Bird Dogs, the Dallas Mavericks select Olivier-Maxence Prosper. They get 2 first-round picks out of the 10th pick, and they also get Richaun Holmes, who I don't know if he'll play or not. The Mavericks all of a sudden have a weird center rotation with JaVale McGee, Dwight Powell probably coming back, Maxi Kleber, Richaun Holmes now, Dereck Lively, and so here we are. Couple of future seconds. Now we have more news on the Celtics and Pistons trade. The Pistons are acquiring the 25th pick. Celtics get the 31st pick, and a couple of future second-round picks to the Pistons. Now I'm lost. On this. The second-round picks are going to the Pistons, and Woj must have tweeted that wrong because he said 31. The Celtics will get 31, and then he quote tweeted and said number 31 and future second-round picks to the Pistons. So he must have meant from the Pistons, because that's the only thing that makes sense in this. Any other favorite draft picks at this point? Your Jazz are coming. I forgot what team you cover. Your Jazz are coming up pretty soon here.
Yeah, I love the board. Like the way 16 and 28's fallen for the Jazz, I've loved. I didn't like. I wasn't thrilled with Taylor Hendricks, despite being my 9th best player on the board. Like we talked about at the very outset, like we felt like it was a 9-player draft. And then Coulibaly has kind of like inserted himself to make this the board change, and that's what we talked about at the beginning. 16, I told from the Jazz perspective all week on Locked On Jazz, I talked about how if the Jazz get a wing, which was my preference, they're going to take a guard at 16. I assumed it might be more of a point guard, but George I have higher than a lot of the point guards that were projected to go there. So I can't be frustrated. I just wonder what the Jazz are going to target here. I would personally target potential. But something in me is saying that they're not going to take a GG Jackson. They're not going to take, I would have said Dereck Whitehead if he was here. Leonard Miller would be awesome for me. There are guys that mathematically there are 2 picks before the Jazz that there's someone should be there. I just kind of don't have the faith that that's where the direction they're heading. I also think there's a chance the Jazz trade the pick instead of having it guaranteed, maybe get 2 seconds because that's something that's been floating around rumor wise. But I'm optimistic. Like the Jazz draft, despite I really wanted Jarace Walker, it started off with a heartbreak. I'm feeling pretty good.
there is some players available for you. Best available. You mentioned Leonard Miller a lot. Bryce Sensabaugh is a player we haven't talked about yet, but he was mocked a lot in like the teens, like the late teens, and he seems to be slipping now.
I think he's got some medical concerns.
Woj just tweeted, Pacers are keeping 26 and eyeing a mid-major riser on their boards. Who's a mid-major riser?
Ben Shepherd.
Looks like we'll see.
I hope I'm not wrong. I'm pretty sure I'm right.
We don't know. We don't know.
It's got to be.
Woj hasn't confirmed it yet. We're still waiting on it. Who else is left who else is left? We've got pick still for like you said, the Pacers at 26, so they're eyeing Ben Shepherd. The Hornets at 27, your Jazz at 28, we just talked about. The Pacers again, they traded this pick, right?
Yeah.
This is the Nuggets.
The Nuggets.
Nuggets at 29, and then the Clippers.
I think the Nuggets are going to target a 3-and-D. I've heard some rumors that they like a certain 3-and-D guy. And I feel pretty good about that one.
Repair?
Jordan Walsh.
Interesting. We'll see if that becomes true. Jordan Walsh from Arkansas. Yeah. Here we go. It's in. You guessed it. The Indiana Pacers at 26 are selecting Ben Shepherd. What are the Pacers getting in Ben Shepherd?
Ben Shepherd really made a name for himself at the Combine. He had an 8 of 10 shooting performance, knocked down open threes. He played on the ball at Belmont, was a big-time scorer there, but it's not necessarily the role that he'll play down the road. The only concern for him is he's good defensively against mid-majors. He's just not very big. Like, he needs to put on more weight. Despite being a senior, he's still sub 200 pounds at 6'6". And so you'd typically expect someone to be who's like a 3-and-D, and that's what his role is, to be a little bit sturdier. But he can shoot the ball. He's someone that improved a lot his senior year, and he's young for a senior. He's still 21 years old. I wouldn't say that based on the board that would be my pick, but I will say that I like the way the Pacers are thinking of finding a complimentary 3-and-D guy to play kind of second units with Nembhard.
So you think this is a pick where he's got to develop, he's got to fill out a little bit. He's not as big as you would want a 3-and-D guy, but they're taking a risk on somebody that could develop for him pretty well.
Yeah, I don't think he's necessarily like a risk. I think he's got a projectable game. I just think he needs to get stronger, and that's something I think an NBA program can do easily.
Why the rise? Woj talked about a mid-major guy rising. Where did you have him on your board?
I think around 40.
Yeah, he had him at 40. So why the rise for him? What did people see at the Combine and in the draft process?
He shot well at the Combine, and very few players did that. So I think that's truly the rise. Like, he was solid defensively, held up against high major athletes, and shot better than everyone else. And I think that helped him tremendously.
Yeah,
you'll enjoy this. I've got a group chat that's very active.
It's buzzing, going nuts right now because the Jazz are going to be up here in one pick.
Yeah, and I've got it on silent. My phone just isn't tolerating it. And my friends are saying, "What on earth is going on to everything?" Because we're big college basketball guys in my friend group. And they know these players, and they're like, how are Nick Smith and all these players falling? Because like talent's talent. Like, he's got it. Like, right. Cam Whitmore was falling, and my Lord, were we perplexed. And I've tried not to look at my phone, but at a certain point I thought it was going to explode.
At some point the group chat has to be answered, right? Like, you can't just ghost it enough to.
Yeah.
Oh man. Now we're here with the Hornets back on the clock. I'm going to ask you again, who's best available for the Hornets? Who are you looking at with the Hornets to pair with now with Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball in them?
Leonard Miller would be the best available for me. I could see them going with Sensabaugh because they got a lot of long, rangy athletes that haven't panned out at this point.
Yeah.
I think I'd project that they go with a guy like Leonard Miller or Sensabaugh. Both of them have upside, but have track record for success this past year.
Makes a lot of sense. We don't know what's going to happen with Miles Bridges either. I mean, they're still trying to figure out. I think they're still trying to figure out that he may just come back and play, but that's going to be a weird situation for them. Yeah, Ben Shepherd, 26, the last pick that we know. We're waiting on the pick for the Hornets at 27. and then come back the Jazz, which Leaf and his group chat are freaking out about at this point. But yeah, we're still waiting on this. Here we go. I got the pick. Leaf, you're not on video, but if you can come back and you want to make the prediction. Charlotte Hornets at 27. Make the prediction, and then I'll tip the pick.
I'll just go Leonard Miller again.
With the 27th pick, the Charlotte Hornets select Nick Smith Jr. Finally, the guy goes off the board. It feels like he's been there forever from Arkansas. What are they getting with this pick that maybe they didn't get in James Bouknight?
I would say Nick Smith is a very talented scorer. The way he scores is almost concerning, though, because he's very like guile-oriented. He's a floater, mid-range, tough shot maker, as opposed to like someone who scores efficiently as a point guard, if that makes sense. I think he's like a two guard in a point guard's body who scores in an unconventional style. But when he's on, he's on. Like he's got the capacity to score. He's different from a guy like Jaden Hardy, who you may remember I was very high on last year, where I thought Hardy just missed shots that he can make, but like he got space. I think Nick Smith takes hard shots, but he doesn't create a lot of space. So this is someone I was actually very low on throughout the process. And coming into the year, he was regarded as the most likely to be the top college player taken.
Nick Smith just had his head on the table, is like bawling. And he went and hugged his mom, I'm guessing, maybe now his dad, and it just like head in her shoulder for like 10, 15 seconds. And he is emotional. He was almost not a first round pick, which is kind of wild. This is still, it's still a human story with some of these guys. Wild to see a guy fall like that. And we're seeing the reaction. Hopefully it motivates him, but he is emotional right now. And we know the Jazz pick.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do.
Oh boy.
Make the prediction and I'll tip the pick. Leif Thulin, substitute host of Locked On Jazz.
I've got an educated guess. I'm going to go with Julian Phillips.
That is completely off the board. With the 28th pick, the Utah Jazz select Bryce Sensabaugh out of Ohio State. So they don't get Cam Whitmore, but they do get Bryce Sensabaugh. What are they getting in Bryce Sensabaugh?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. That's one I wouldn't have foreseen, but he can shoot the ball. He's one of the better scorers in this draft. He's defensively not very good, but he can score the ball. He plays almost bully ball. I feel like he's got the capacity to be one of the, I compare him to TJ Warren almost. Like he scores in a way that's unconventional for a non-star player. So you got to figure out where to play him. But if he spaces the floor and becomes a two guard, I don't like mind the pick. It's just not the direction I would have anticipated the Jazz going. I would have anticipated them going 3-and-D, find a tremendous athlete. But they got a freshman who can score, like freshman who can score the basketball at a high level, someone that spaces the floor and immediately will have at least a skill in scoring. Like defensively, I think there's a body there that can get better. I wonder what the medicals dictate, and maybe they checked out.
So you expect him to? They're going to develop him off the bench. He's not going to have a big role for them at this point, as you thought maybe a guy earlier in the draft could have for them.
I'd imagine that's what that means. One thing that pops in my head would be, what does Colin Sexton's future look like for the Jazz if they have Keontae George and Bryce Sensabaugh?
We could just hear your group chat just going off. about
I'm trying. I really am. It's on silent. My phone is shaking right now. But no, it's interesting. Once in high school, you'll love this story. Once in high school, someone's phone actually blew up. Like not just like blew up metaphorically. Like there was fire and there was a fire extinguisher because it blew up just randomly sitting on a table. So it's not doing that, but it is blowing up metaphorically. I do wonder about what he does down the road for the Jazz, because the Jazz really like him. His work ethic's unparalleled. Like he works so hard. He's lovable. He's a little smaller. The Jazz, if you notice these picks, positionally, they're getting bigger. Sensabaugh is 6'6", 235.
Yeah, right.
Taylor Hendricks is enormous. Sexton's 6'1". He plays the two guard. So that's what I think. Maybe THT, Taylor Horton Tucker, or Sexton is on the outs, or maybe this is just a high upside pick.
Bryce Sensabaugh going to the Utah Jazz. Let's look at the Utah Jazz draft as a whole now. They take the Utah Jazz. Oh, I gotta remember who they take.
We took Taylor Hendricks and Keontae George.
took Taylor Hendricks at 9. They took Keontae George at 16, and now Bryce Sensabaugh at 28. What do you think about their draft as a whole now?
I'm trying to think about like that answer. Like I'm thinking about what I'm going to talk about for Locked On Jazz after this. And my answer would be we got a lot of players that I think are good. And I think if you were to average where I have these players on my board, I like where we got them. Like Hendricks was 9. Keontae George was above 16. Sensabaugh was above 28. That's a successful draft. But I didn't come away loving any pick, like if that makes sense. I came away pleasantly surprised with what happened. I came away cautiously optimistic, but there's just not this adoration of any single pick. I think Sensabaugh is a really good value at 28, so I'm happy with that. It's just not the way I thought the Jazz would draft. Like the whole draft was different than what I'd been hearing. The smoke screens, like I thought the Jazz, if it got to 9 and the players that were gone, they were going to go with Bufkin and trade up and try to get a guy like Coulibaly if he slipped. Now, if Coulibaly went too high, maybe they take Whitmore or Hendricks in this case, and then they go guard, but point guard as opposed to a scoring guard in Keontae George. So different direction, but I'd say I'm pleased. I haven't come up with a grade in my head. I'm a little conflicted.
Yeah, you don't have to give a grade. Yeah, but it just does feel like they pick solid guys at each spot, right? Like, hey, this is a solid pick. I feel good about this pick. Not great. Like, it wasn't incredible value, but they did get good guys at each pick. And so 3 picks for the Utah Jazz. They're building out their rebuild now. And, now we're just waiting on the last 2 picks. The Denver Nuggets and the Los Angeles Clippers still waiting on to see who they pick. And we know the 29th pick, Denver Nuggets. You want to make a prediction?
Jordan Walsh.
With the 29th pick, the Denver Nuggets select Gonzaga guard Julian Strawther.
Really? Maybe they're taking him in the second round. That's unfortunate for me because I was very confident in Walsh being 29. I makes sense. He spaces the floor. You provide a shooter around Jokic. I get the appeal. I don't think he's a very good defender, but he's one of the best shooters remaining on the board. And if you space around Jokic, you can make up for that with some of their other players.
There you go, getting some shooters around Jokic, and now we have the last pick, the Los Angeles Clippers. I'm not sure who they're picking yet because I think the pick is not even like the Nuggets pick is not even in yet. But with the Clippers, who's the last player on the board in the first round? Who are you going with if you're the Clippers?
Leonard Miller.
What if he falls out of the first? What if he falls out of the first?
I don't
round?
know why he's falling. Like, what? Let me just put some stats out here. He scored 17 and 10 as an 19-year-old in the G League against grown men. When Scoot Henderson went down, he was the best prospect available on this G League team, and it was averaging 22 and 13 for about a month. Like, and his efficiency is through the roof. Like, he's not a great shooter, but he shot 79% from the free throw line, 30% from 3, and 54% from the field. Is a rebounding magnet. And yes, I don't know exactly what his role is immediately, but that type of productivity at 6'10", 7'2" wingspan with enormous hands at that age, who grew up playing guard, is hard to overlook. I highly, highly doubt that someone lets him fall past the first couple picks of the second round. And whoever gets him, I think is getting a steal.
It's interesting. Leonard Miller, Ryan Rupert is one that some people thought could go in the first round. James Najee now looks like he may go to the second round. Other guys, Trace Jackson Davis was getting some love recently. He's going to go later.
I think Kobe Brown's another name to look out here. Shooter, kind of big-bodied shooter from Missouri. Someone I think's talented. I have him higher on my board. I also can see the appeal for them just because they like wings who can space the floor.
Minnesota is traded to get number 33 from San Antonio, according to Woj. So Minnesota has a pick. Good for them, Minnesota. Now that all their picks are going to the Jazz.
Yeah, good for them. Hopefully they don't take Leonard Miller and further bother me.
Yeah, now we're waiting on the last pick of the first round. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us on Locked On NBA Draft. We'll hang around until the last pick in the first round is made. We have a show that covers your team every day. Go check out the link in the description wherever you're watching this to find the show. I host Locked On Mavericks. We're 5 days a week. Locked On NBA Big Board is a draft show that's 5 days a week with Rafael Barlow, Leif Thulin, Richard Stamen, and friends. So go check out that. And we have a show for each and every one of you. But we'll stay until the last pick in the first round. And the Timberwolves are sending the Spurs 2 future second-round picks for the 33rd pick in the draft, which is in the second round. Matt George just tweeted that Kyle Kuzma makes a lot of sense for the Kings now. They cleared $30 million in space. That does make a ton of sense for them now. I don't know if he helps their rebounding. He helps their perimeter defense just a little bit. And he adds them a little bit, another like scorer off the dribble. He can do some more stuff like that. But yeah, it does not help their rebounding or their their defensive issues at the rim.
I think he could help their rebounding given the right situation.
He's big.
Yeah, I mean he's not a rebounder, but like he's someone who has the capacity to grab some rebounds for them.
You'd say the same thing about Harrison Barnes though. Like you're going from Harrison Barnes to Kyle Kuzma, rebounding wise, a little bit of lateral move.
Yeah, it's a bit of a wash.
Waiting on the 30th pick. Who's going to be Mr. First Round irrelevant in the first round going to the Clippers? Leonard Miller still has not gone off the board. We're surprised at that.
I think that's the direction they likely should go. Maybe they like someone like CD Sissoko, also from the G League Ignite, who's a big guard from France, who's a playmaker, but he just struggles to shoot the ball, but he's very good defensively. And he's got the athletic tools to develop.
Kelly Eco just reported from The Athletic, Cam Whitmore says he doesn't know where the reported medical concerns came from. Quote, I feel fine. It's my body.
Well, I hope he's right.
I hope he is for the Rockets' sake too. I mean, it's a good risk for them. Cam Whitmore going 20th to the Rockets.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, you can take a swing, and even if he's an absolute bust and hardly plays for you, it makes total sense. Like I would give every pass. Whereas if you're going to take someone who's like a defined, understood, like, hey, this is what you're going to get, like a Chris Murray, for instance, and he doesn't turn out, like there's no risk in that, and then it doesn't work out. This way, I think you got an unbelievable, and I don't even think it's that big a risk at 20 because it's 20th pick, but you got crazy high reward if it gets it. Yeah.
Really good move for the Rockets. And if his knee is fine, then hey, it's another thing Ime Udoka has to figure out with the Rockets. Still waiting on the Clippers pick. They're on the clock right now. There's about just under 3 minutes now left for them to make this pick, the last pick in the first round. Leonard Miller still on the board. Thinking about it, CD Cisco, a couple other players we're looking at for them. James Najee may make sense there.
Yeah, I could see it.
They've just got so many guys. They've needed to make some kind of consolidation trade, and they still just haven't made it. Everybody thinks that they're going to move Robert Covington and Marcus Morris. They tried to move Marcus Morris already. They tried to trade him in the Porzingis trade that fell through. So he's got to move at some point. That probably happens during free agency now.
Yeah, I wonder the direction the Clippers had as a whole, considering like, do they keep their stars together? But as they're constructed right now, it seems likely that they'd try to just add what they go for in a large wing who, is defensively oriented. I mean, because you could make the argument maybe they need a point guard because they just don't have point guard stability.
They try to get Brogdon.
Exactly, but like, what player are you going to get right here? That's a true point guard you think can contribute to a team that has aspirations to win a championship if they stay together. What player has the potential? Maybe they go with GG Jackson. They just say, hey, let's swing for the fences.
Interesting. Yeah, that they could do that because they've got time. They can bide some time, I guess. You said GG Jackson next year would go like top 5.
Yeah, I mean, there's an argument he could have gone 1. Like, and that's not crazy. Like Rafael Barlow and I've had this discussion numerous times on NBA Big Board. But we'll see. We'll see. I have not had a good track record since we've gotten to pick 12. I was doing pretty well for a while, and then Cam Whitmore kept falling, and I just seemed to have cursed my predicting abilities.
Last pick in the first round, we've got it. Number 30. Make the prediction.
GG Jackson. And now it's going to be Leonard Miller or something.
With the 30th pick in the NBA draft, the Los Angeles Clippers are selecting Kobe Brown, a guy that you said earlier that you suggested. What are the Clippers getting in Kobe Brown?
That's the third time that's happened. He's a big-bodied shooter, someone of the ilk of David Roddy, where the pathway's been carved by Grant Williams, David Roddy for big, strong defensive players who can shoot the ball. And I think he's the best pure shooter of those guys of an archetype. He shot 45% as a senior. He's also sneakily athletic and has ball skills. He had 44 dunks, I believe, in like a lot of them in the half court. Kobe Brown's someone I saw play, and I was like, man, who the heck is this guy? And why is he not in the first round of mock drafts? And I have him 24, I think, on my board. Let's see. 25. I think that was a very good pick. I really like that value, and he fits what they're trying to build.
There you go. Clippers with the last pick in the first round, according to Shams Charania, are taking Kobe Brown, 24th player on Leif Thulin's board. Good pick there. Go check out our Locked On shows. I got to go do Locked On Mavs. You got to go do Locked On Jazz. We've got a lot of stuff to get to. More content coming tonight. Go check out the Locked On show that covers your team every day. We'll do it all throughout the offseason and into the season and all that. Guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us on the Locked On NBA Draft 2023 live show. Peace out.